We are here to discuss partnerships. However, the term seems to mean different things to people. For some, it's about giving instructions and setting conditions. For others, it means complying. Africa's experience shows that this approach does not deliver the transformation that we need. A good partnership does not create dependency. It creates value. If you want to work with Africa, a true and lasting partnership must be equal, with shared risk and reward. For Africa, the priorities are clear. We need infrastructure, technology, and industries to trade competitively. For Europe, the opportunity is equally evident. Africa offers a growing market, talent, and the natural resources essential for the green and digital transformation. Our interests are aligned, and this is the right time to turn them into sustained mutual growth.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning in Pacific Northwest. I am Gaetan Dofanzo. Welcome to Congo Unfiltered, another week, another episodes of Congo Unfiltered. Today we are going to discuss a lot, and I have a really good guest. He has been with us multiple times, and I am actually happy that he is joining us today, Claude Gatebuke. We are going to discuss a couple issues. Actually, one mainly that probably you may have seen or may heard. We are going to talk about tungsten, which is one of the three minerals, like it's called. So when Rwanda exports those three T's minerals, tin, tantalum, and tungsten, are those really Rwandan minerals, or are they Congolese resources stolen under a new name? It's very important for us to ask that question. And that's also the context of this conversation, basis of this conversation, because behind every responsible export deal lies power, profits, and in the case of the Congo, silence. So let's start with the name making the headlines. You might have seen it. I'm going to put that on here. This company called Trinity Metals. Let me share this. This one. Okay. So Trinity Metals. Trinity Metals has made the headline regarding the export of tungsten lately, and the company was founded in 2022, and that was after merging three historic Rwandan mining firms, Rutongo, Musha, and Nyakabingo, and I apologize if I'm butchering the names. So Trinity presents itself as a responsible producer of tin, of tungsten, and also tantalum, right? So what we need to understand, or what we need to realize, is that Trinity isn't just a local miner that is located in Rwanda, like I mentioned. Its largest shareholder is a company called TechMet Limited, a Dublin-based company backed by the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation. Yes, U.S. taxpayer money. So in 2025, what happened in 2025, early this year, Trinity Metals made history by signing deals to export tungsten directly to the United States. And that was after the so-called peace deal that was signed between Rwanda and the Congo, facilitated by the Trump administration. So that tungsten exported by Trinity is refined by GTP, which is another American largest tungsten processor, and tend to the U.S. company called Nathan Trotter, with obviously the blessing of the U.S. State Department. So on paper, right, it looks like this is progress. That Rwanda is proudly into the global clean mineral supply chain. And as an African, and I think that could also seen as progress, having an African country dealing directly with the West, with the idea, the understanding, or the assumption that that will create jobs locally, meaning in Rwanda. But we've learned that in this particular story, especially when it comes to the Congo, that progress often hides plunder. So let's ask this question that no one else will, and I'm going to say that again. Is this tungsten truly Rwandan, or is it Congolese tungsten smuggled, laundered, and rebranded under a Rwandan flag? So to understand this, we really must go back to October 2010. And yes, October 1st, 2025 marked 15 years since the publication of what's called the United Nations Mapping Report, which exposed the atrocities committed in the Democratic Republic of the Congo between 1993 and 2003. That report is really detailed and specific. It talks about massacres, systemic violence, crimes so grave that could amount to genocide. And quoting specifically the report, it says that if these facts are brought in front of a competent court, we could talk about genocide. So the report didn't just name militias, it names armies, including Rwanda's. For a brief moment, it looked like the world might finally confront the truth. But then, something very interesting happened. Suddenly, another narrative took over the global headlines: conflict minerals. And Friends of the Congo has been at the heart of that conversation for decades, since the creation of that narrative in 2010, right after the publication of the mapping report. So instead of asking the true and pertinent question, who has committed crimes in the Congo, who is committing crimes in the Congo, the conversation shifted to how our phones and laptops were made. Good questions, but the timing was odd. An activist and corporation rally around conflict minerals. Section 1502 of the Dodd-Frank Act forced companies to disclose whether the tantalum, tungsten, gold, coltan, and you name them, all those rare, earth minerals that today the US seems to be eager to go to trade war with China. That same policy was put in place allegedly. If you read what it says, or what they say in the US government's website, it want companies to be more ethical when it comes to minerals. So it was well intentioned. I really want to give them the benefit of the doubt. Well intentioned. But again, the timing was everything at that moment, because as the conflict minerals narrative grew, the mapping report and the Rwandans' alleged role in atrocities quietly disappear from the global conscience. Because Rwanda, as documented in that report, the Rwandan government led by Paul Kagame killed millions of people. There were Tutsis, there were Hutus of other tribes, there were Congolese. They went on Congo soil. They went all the way to Central African Republic. So these were grave violation of international law. These were acts described as war crimes, crimes against humanities, and genocide. So enter in the conversation during the exact same time is the ITSCI, the International Tan Supply Chain Initiative, managed by the International Tan Association, ITA. Their bag and tag system claimed to track minerals from mine, to export. Rwanda became, at that time, at that very moment, the poster child of responsible sourcing. But there is a paradox, guys, that Rwanda's export of tantalum and tungsten far exceeds what its own geology can produce. That's not me saying that. Geographically, Rwanda is perfectly positioned, not as a miner, but as a laundering hub. Congolese minerals are smuggled across the border, tagged as ITSCI compliant and sold globally as Rwandan. And actually, that was in the conversation with our executive director who shared that with me, and it was on this show a couple months ago, actually, that the founder of that organization was in direct talk with James Kabarebe, the current minister, if I'm not mistaken, of foreign affairs. And he was at the time the strategic person, the person who put in place system that will continuously invade the Congo under different militias, and sometimes under the RDF itself, having invaded the Congo in 1996, 1998, and lately 2025. So fast forward to today, Trinidad Metals ships tungsten to the United States in Pennsylvania. Rwanda calls it industrial advancement, but credible investigation tell different stories. Again, these are not my personal opinion. I do have a lot of opinion about this, but these are facts. Bloomberg early this year talked about smuggling of Congo's minerals into Rwanda has reached unprecedented levels. Reuters, still in 2025, talked about Rwanda firm Boss Mining Solution, but Colton from Rebel held areas of the Congo. Global Witness traders, that's what Global Witness is saying. They talked about traders like Traxxas, but Rwandan minerals trace back to the Congolese conflict zone. The European Parliament early this year, in February 2025, to be specific, urged suspension of EU Rwanda mineral trade agreements. The Responsible Minerals Initiative, RMI, labeled Rwanda supply chain as extremely high risk. So I'm going to ask this question again. Is Trinity Tungsten Rwandan, or is it Congolese stolen wealth, washed clean by paperwork and political silence? If US companies import this tungsten without due diligence, they risk violating their own law. The Dodd-Frank Act of 1502, the SEC regulation, and the fraud statute. But beyond legality is the moral bankruptcy, I believe, that American corporations are funding conflicts, propping up armed groups, and betraying their own pledge of ethical sourcing. So this is not about trade. Particularly for the Congo, it's about survival. Particularly for the people of Rwanda, it's about survival. So profits from smuggled mineral funds militia like M23, which, as we all know now, has been fueling a war that never ends. 30 years of aggression. Territories are captured, not for justice or people, but for the soil beneath them, for what they have. Rwanda profits, corporation profits, but the Congolese people bleeds. The Rwandan people bleeds. So every shipment of tungsten carries not just metals, but memories. Because we have evidence of villages being erased, families being displaced, lives destroyed. So if we really want peace in the Great Lake region, we must stop confusing responsible sources with responsible behavior. And until Congo's minerals serve Congolese people, not foreign investors or proxy's government, there will be no justice, no sovereignty, and no lasting peace. So, joining me is Claude Gatebuke. He's a survivor of Rwanda's genocide, human rights activist, and the executive director of African Great Lake region. Claude, welcome back. Really good to have you here. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. Thank you. Thank you for having me on, Gaetan. I'm looking forward to this conversation, and thank you for laying out that all of that background, so that folks know that what we're talking about here is not just stuff that we're making up. There is documentation outside of what we are saying ourselves. This is not to invalidate, because there is this tendency to suppress African voices. I want to speak about this right out the gate, to suppress African voices as sources, and to think that the only valid sources are based on being European, being Western, being academics who usually show up way after the fact and write about it many years later, and then become the gatekeepers of the narrative. But also, I want to make sure that as we speak, that we center the voices of the people who are directly affected in the moment and are sharing these stories with us, and that we share the stories without any filters on this, or without necessarily going through the filter of all of these other institutions that have served for years as gatekeepers to the reality and the truth and the facts on the ground.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that, and that's why I wanted to have Ronald voice in the conversation, because really to understand what's going on in the Congo, we need to be able to see past the Congo, right? And
Yep.
a couple days ago, full disclosure, we had a long conversation offline, and I was like, very interesting perspective. Let's bring it to the show and have this conversation. So my first question to you is, first of all, what is your perspective about what's going on in the Congo, and particularly the latest news with Trinity Metals getting minerals directly from Rwanda? It's progress, right? As a Rwandan citizen, what do you think?
I see you're you're asking a question saying what is going on in the Congo, and then you ask me about Rwanda exporting
Yeah.
minerals to the U.S. Um, my perspective is, it's not. I don't like to just call things perspective
Hmm.
um, when there is also fact that is a part, that is the basis of what we are sharing. Because sometimes that's the other part is, there's a lot of gaslighting that happens where people will just say, oh, what you're saying is just your perspective. So let's talk about the facts. The fact is, since 1996, since the invasion of Congo by Rwanda and Uganda, which it doesn't start in 96. It also doesn't start, as many people put it. It's not rooted in the Rwandan genocide. It's rooted way before the Rwandan genocide, when Museveni, after losing an election in Uganda, started a war And then he started recruiting child soldiers and also some adults, including Paul Kagame and others who were refugees in the Congo. They wreaked havoc in Uganda, they wreaked havoc in Rwanda, then they went into the Congo. And since 1996, um, Rwanda's and Uganda's exports, Congo was invaded by both Rwanda and Congo with the help of Western powers like the US and the UK, and the European Union is locked in with them now. They have had this diplomatic cover, which you talked about it. The mapping report came out, and then people started some other distractions to distract from the mapping report being centered and justice being centered for the Congolese. Um, the that invasion, there's also political cover. There is economic and military support in money, equipment, and training from all of Rwanda's and Uganda's partners. But what is happened, it's glaring, tied to this export of minerals, is Rwanda has exported amounts of minerals that are exponentially more than found in the soil of Rwanda. But not only that, the numbers of minerals exported from Rwanda, if you look at the reports, any reports going back 25, almost 30 years now, 2001, 2002, 2003 UN reports, they talk about how much more resources and minerals Rwanda and Uganda, like billions of dollars worth of minerals that they were exporting after invading Congo. So somehow, all of a sudden, after starting a war of aggression into the neighbors and aggression and occupation, they also found a way to come up with all these minerals somehow that had never been found never found in the decades prior, but all of a sudden during a war, an invasion of a country that's full of like really, really, really like rich in minerals, almost like, just take it this way. If, let's just say, I barely have any clothes and I have a neighbor that has all of these fancy clothes and everything, and then I start robbing, well, I invade the neighbor's house, I also occupy the neighbor's house, and I start, and I'm all G'd up every day, just with all of these, nice fancy clothes. Somehow, all of a sudden, the clothes that I didn't have, now I have, right? That's what happened with Rwanda and Uganda. I want to put it in simple terms because I want the audience not to be lost in what happened. Is basically you get a robber that comes into your house, takes over the house, part of the house, occupies your house, has help and support from others outside and authorities and so many others to make sure that nothing happens to them, and then they start exporting this. So what we got here now, even with this latest tungsten export, these are resources that are stolen from the Congo. The history, like historical factors, show that what is exported out of Rwanda are stolen minerals from the Congo, because Rwanda doesn't even have that much minerals or this type of minerals. There is some tungsten in Rwanda, which it makes it easier to launder these minerals, to wash, to cleanse these the crime of actually plundering the Congo. But another thing is the Rwandan government, the RPF government under Paul Kagame, they spend a lot of money, they invest a lot in PR. And believe me, if they were like 10 years from actually having a factory or some kind of production of this amount of tungsten, they would have been publishing this for the last 15, 20, 30 years, whatever, however long it's been since they've started working on this production. They would not just do like a grand opening and stuff like that, because they want people to think that there are minerals coming out of Rwanda. These minerals come straight out of Rwanda and they're not stolen minerals. And so, yeah, those are my thoughts. It's, Rwanda's exporting minerals, especially the amounts that they export, including the tungsten, including this latest tungsten, those are stolen minerals. The only issue I have with your introduction, and maybe that's because of censorship that happens on all of these platforms, I hear you saying allegedly. and you were talking about the alleged crimes of Rwandan troops in the Congo. The mapping report that you were referencing, that mapping report, it started because there was the discovery of mass graves. And those mass graves were discovered in multiple places, multiple parts of the Congo. So it's not a simple, what's the word? It's not simply that the Rwandan that these are allegations. These are real things that happen to real people, and people experience these things. And so I just want to, continue to make sure that, while yes, maybe censorship rules on these platforms prevent us from calling a spade exactly as we should, it's important that we know these aren't just allegations. In fact, I have an audio from Paul Kagame himself. It's in Kenya, Rwanda, so it wouldn't help the audience here. But one of the things he says, and he did this on April 13th, 2010. This was 6 months before the mapping report came out. He bragged. He said, what he said was, we went into the Congo. Those that we wanted to repatriate, we repatriated them. And those that we wanted to shoot, we shot them. These are Kagame's own words. Now,
Wow.
I want to, if it's okay, I do want to play that audio, even though it's in Kinyarwanda,
Go ahead.
for the record, so that nobody says that this is something that we're making up. These are things that he said himself, and whoever wants to get it translated can get it translated themselves. So let me just go ahead and put it on for a second. And
Is it on YouTube or anywhere that we can I can show it, play it, or
I'll share it with you.
okay.
The audio is not very good. It's not very good quality, but I'll share it with you, and you can see if you're able to play it.
Yeah.
Let me see. Give me 1 second. Guitar.
And yes, and while you're doing that, I really want to say that, and then again, technical term we speaking, allegedly, but there is a reason why there is not a tribunal for the Congo that was created. Because, like I already said, if you are innocent, if you have not committed crimes, well, um, let's go to court. You know, let's go to court. You are so innocent, and you did not uh, commit crimes. You did not genocide people. You did not ethnic cleanse people. Let's go to court. We're gonna present evidence that we have. You're gonna present evidence that you have, and we will see who is right or who is wrong. So there is a reason why they do not want international justice, international law to be implemented for the case of the Congo. There is a reason why they are bearing right now the mapping report 15 years later. Not a single person was convicted. Not a single person. So I just got the link from you. I'm going to.
While you
Okay, how do you put this? Okay.
while you pull it up, um, the you're talking about, I actually once got to ask Paul Kagame this question directly on the
Oh, you
BBC.
did? Wait,
Yeah.
what? You met Paul
Yes.
Kagame directly?
I have not met him in person. I've
Okay.
been in places where I showed up. We served him with a case, with the lawsuit, and he ran off before I got a chance to see him. But um, this was in Oklahoma City at Oklahoma Christian University. By the
Okay.
way, the person who was the who was running the school, Mike O'Neill, at some point I saw in recent years that now I don't know if he still is today, but in recent years he was actually either like the head or among the leaders of the University of Rwanda in Rwanda. So in 2010, before the mapping report, you see this speech that I shared with you, it was on April 13, 2010. April
Mm-hmm.
30th, 2010, we were in Oklahoma City where he had a graduation. He was a speaker at the graduation and served him with a lawsuit that includes some of these crimes that he's bragging about. And he ran off without speaking. Um, and the university, um, of course, held their ceremony. We also had a protest there. But then he eventually, this guy, Mike O'Neill, ends up somehow in Rwanda years later, uh, as
Look
part
at
of
that.
the university in, like, just straight incest, you know.
No
um,
wonder.
yeah. So, and again, these are things that you can go and find on the internet. Just look at who was running Oklahoma Christian University in 2010, and then take that name, put it in Google, and put Rwanda, and see what see what you pull.
That's crazy. So the same strategy goes way back. But I got
Mhm.
your video, so let me play this for the audience, and then like you say, you disclaim it's in Kinyarwanda, but I think it's public records. People there are experts, people who speak the language that will know. So let's hear it. Oh, you can't hear? Okay. Let's see. You can't hear?
I can hear it. I'm not sure if the audience can hear it.
Okay, let
Um,
me not.
when you share, see
Interesting.
if you can share the sound.
Um, okay. Think
But I could read
also
the
share
caption.
tab audio. Yeah.
Okay.
I wonder if I need to download it. What about now? Can you hear? No?
Um, Give me 1 second. Let me see if I can go on the broadcast and see if I can hear it. No,
No? Okay. Technical issues, guys. My apologies. Is this on YouTube by any chance?
no,
No?
it's not.
Okay.
Yeah, but it should be.
Maybe if you have the video, because it doesn't let me download it. Let's
Yeah, I'll
see.
download it and send it to you.
Because it says share to. Oh, there you go. There's a download button. Download.
Yeah, it's a short video, so it shouldn't take. It's a short video. It should be easy um, to push. But like I said, the thankfully the caption in English does have and includes, what Kagame was saying, where he says that they went after refugees in the Congo, and those that they wanted to shoot, they shot them, and the ones they wanted to bring back by force, they brought them back by force. He is talking
Yes.
about those exact crimes in the mapping report, and I brought it up because as one of the things that they did when the mapping report came out. So while you're working on it, I just want to share some of this. So he made
I
this
can't
speech.
download it, by the way. I don't know why. So maybe if you have the video, you can send it to me.
All right, yeah. But what happened was after the mapping report came out, all of a sudden they became innocent. They were like, oh, no, 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 we didn't commit these crimes. We didn't do this. There was no genocide in the Congo. There was no genocide of Hutu people in the Congo, which is clearly documented in the mapping report. And the thing is, there is um, there is um, a definition of genocide, right? And that definition, what they did in the Congo, not only to the Hutu people, but also to some of the Congolese people, and what they're doing today fits the exact um, definition of genocide. And here is that definition. It is the intent. So intent is like the key to destroy a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group in whole or in part through acts such as killing members, causing serious harm, imposing conditions to destroy the group, preventing births, or forcibly transferring children. They are doing all of this in the Congo. They did all of this in the Congo. Of course, again, the definition says in whole or in part. It's not everybody. You don't have to get everybody for it to fit that definition. And what they did in the Congo fits that definition, and that's why I was also saying, I brought up this speech by Kagame because um, um, I was talking about how, for me, I've got issues with referring to this as alleged. Knowing where the mapping report came from, knowing that this thing was, all of it started as a result of mass graves being found in multiple places. We have, women who have been totally destroyed. Some of that talks about it talks about um, preventing births. Some of the women, the way that these Rwandan and Ugandan troops went and assaulted them and amputated their genitals and things like that, those are things that prevent people from potentially giving birth in the future. And so all of that, those are real things. At time you can check and see maybe over email that you've got it. Again, those fit the definition of genocide. So Rwandan troops, the Ugandan troops have and continue to commit genocide in the Congo, and companies that are trading in these resources with with Rwanda and Uganda are also complicit in financing these atrocities. In fact, this genocide. In fact, also governments that protect and provide diplomatic and political shield to Rwanda and Uganda, uh, countries that train Rwandan and Ugandan troops, countries that fund Rwandan and Ugandan armies, countries that even just simply fund these countries as donor nations. They are all part of this genocide. They are complicit in this genocide. And any universities and places that have any kind of funds that are invested in Rwanda and Uganda, they are complicit in this. It's that's just that's what is happening, and that's reality. This isn't I guess we can say allegedly before at the beginning of the show, and say, okay, if you want, for the purposes of not getting censored, call this allegedly. But these are facts on the ground. This is reality. This is what people are living, and this is what people have lived. And again, Rwanda and Rwandan officials jump and start denying these crimes in the Congo after Paul Kagame himself bragged about these crimes less than 6 months before the mapping report came out. I don't know if you got the you're able to get the
Yes.
video.
Let's try this again. And let me know if you can hear. I cannot hear anything. Oh my god. Technical difficulties. That's weird. Guys, they do not want you to hear this. That's my conclusion.
Oh man,
We have
yeah,
been hacked.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm not
Let's
sure
see.
why it's doing that. Let me try to share this one. Uh, okay, let me open this here. That's weird. I literally just played a video at the beginning, and I hope people were able to hear. So, were you able to hear at
Yeah.
the beginning the video on Kagame?
No, 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 not at all. Oh yeah, the
The
Kagame video I could hear.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Mm-hmm.
Read this one. What is this? That's weird. There was nothing, no sound at all. Okay. Um, Let me try to studio. Oh no, I want to.
I did put that video in the studio. Um,
Oh, you did?
yeah, try and see.
Yeah, it didn't work. That's the one that I tried to play.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's continue. I think,
Nah, it's
you know.
fine. Our
Mhm.
apologies, guys. I'm gonna try one more thing. I'm gonna sh- share screen on the other one. Screen three. I will share audio. Oh, maybe that's what was wrong. Okay, let me try this again. Okay, all right, let's try this. Can you hear? No? All right, we tried. Sorry, but uh, I mean, yeah, this is actually technical difficulties that people usually run into. But I was actually trying to like show kind of like I think I've spent like 3 hours talking about this, talking about like the international. Let me see. I want guys to be able to see what I'm seeing. Um, So this document is was published by Friends of the Congo. It is the Spanish indictment document, 187 pages. Um, Transmission of official document received from Madrid, Spain, in response to the ICTR, International Court Tribunal for Rwanda. Um, Not verbal, date of March 18, 2008, and referred. So I think it's very
The date,
important.
the date
Yeah.
is 98. It looks like March 8th, 1998.
No, 2008.
Oh
Right.
yeah, the verbal note.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
the ICTR reference is the one that's 98. But anyway, keep going. You're
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
You're correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
and something interesting is like and I did a whole episode on this, and it's like what is being said about Paul Kagame specifically, like the crime that he committed, and again, I really want to be clear about what is being said, and they even said that at that point, at that time, they did not think that they were competent to trial Paul Kagame because he was the head of state and blah blah blah. And I even had Ann Garrison on the show to clarify and give her perspective regarding the ITCR and how for her and for many people, like it seems like the international law was used to actually go against those who were a threat to Paul Kagame, right? They were actually going after them and overlooking the crimes that Paul Kagame committed. And it is very interesting when you read this document of 2008. Later in August 1992, while he was attending a meeting at Mulindi General Headquarters, Rwanda, he verified that the FPR was not really interested in peace, judging by the word uttered by Paul Kagame, who, according to witness, wanted to take advantage of the peace negotiations only for military purposes, strictly oriented from the very beginning to seize power by force. Seems like something is doing in the Congo clearly. Uh, and they go in details and actually document some of the things. So I really invite you guys um, to go and read this document. Just type Spanish indictment Friends of the Congo and it's on there. You will have that. But back to our conversation, brother Claude, I want to have your perspective on uh the Dodd-Frank Act specifically, because I think you reach out to me and ask, oh, apparently the Congolese government is trying to do a joint task force or a joint operation to kick out the FDLR, and we have debunked on this show, and Friends of the Congo has debunked many times the FDLR threat, right? And we also have presented the discrepancy in the narrative that is being presented by the governor of Rwanda, in particular Paul Kagame, who has used the FDLR as a pretext to invade the Congo. But now we've seen that they sign a deal, a peace deal, that essentially gives legally Rwanda's access to Congo's minerals. And a few months later, uh, the US companies, for the very first time, was able to acquire minerals directly directly, right? Before they used to circumvent it, trying to go around and go buy that in Qatar and other countries, and sometimes even China. But with the trade war happening, with what's going on, they were able to do that directly. And what's your perspective, I guess, on the Dodd-Frank Act? Do you think that the Dodd-Frank Act is a tool to help the Congo? And I know I gave a long presentation at the beginning, but personally, I do think that um, right now with the deal and with the fact that President Tshisekedi was able to agree the terms, even though those terms were not calling out President Kagame's directly, the RDF directly, to withdraw 100% the troops, from the Congo. And now it seems like the Congolese government has stalled some of the conversation regarding the economic framework, and I spoke about that last weekend. For those who want context, go back to Friends of the Congo and watch that. But what's your opinion on the Dodd-Frank Act, particularly the work or the policy put in place to specifically avoid minerals from regions that are under occupations, regions that are ravaged with militia groups, including the RDF. What do you think about the Dodd-Frank Act?
Um, I see. When you say the RDF militia group, you mean Rwandan Defense Forces extension, the
Absolutely.
three, or even I guess the military being a militia. My thoughts on the Dodd-Frank Act is, um, in general, uh, in its spirit, I think it's helpful. Although for me, I classify it, me coming from a perspective where I want revolutionary change, radical change, fundamental change. I put it in the incrementalism, type of change where people are like, yeah, let's reform this. Like lynching black people is bad, so let's just make a law that's kind of in the middle that appeases the lynchers and the lynched, type of thing. Slavery is bad, so let's put some policies in place that says, yeah, you can't, you cannot sell slaves, or you can't trade slaves or something like that, but doesn't actually outlaw like slave ownership type of thing. um, for me, that's kind of how I see the Dodd-Frank Act. It talks about the chain, but what prevents the U.S. government, especially knowing, especially this was back in 2009, 2010. This is the time. At this time, the U.S. was and still was, especially at the time, was the biggest superpower, around the globe with no real challengers. Um, and somehow, all they could do was come up with a law that talks about the chain, the supply chain. Why not go to the root? Why even start the supply? So for me, I did think that it was a minor, very minor deterrent. But in terms of having real impact, it didn't have that real impact because you had I know that you preface this question with the fact that now a U.S. company is trading directly with Rwanda, knowing that they're trading blood minerals, conflict minerals, and the Dodd-Frank Act isn't doing anything about it. This is no different than when you have these laws that says, yeah, if you possess this amount of drugs, this is a crime, right? But then disproportionately, extremely disproportionately, you go after black people, and you go after crack, but not you don't go after powder cocaine, which is abused by mostly white people, versus the crack, which is abused by mostly black people, possessed by mostly black people. And so you end up with a disproportionate prison population. You end up with mass incarceration of black people. This is no different. When you having a policy is not enough. Actually, the work itself, the implementation of policy is what is important. And the Dodd-Frank Act is not the only law that the U.S. has that can actually address what's happening in the Congo, in the region. The U.S. has laws against the use of child soldiers. We know Rwanda and Uganda have used child soldiers. The M23 uses child soldiers, and the M23 is an extension of the Rwandan military in occupying the Congo. And they only used that back in 2012 when the M23, the initial M23 name came out, which again, we go back, when we talk about the Congo, it goes back 30 years. What we have, there's all of these new acronyms, the M23, and right now it's transforming itself into the AFC. And at some point they might have an M26 and M45, whatever the change is in these acronyms. It's the same invaders and the same occupiers, Rwanda and Uganda, using some Congolese puppets to carry out their mission, as well as mostly Rwandan and Ugandan troops doing the harm to the Congolese people. So again, my thoughts on a Dodd-Frank Act is that there was no will, no political will by the U.S. government to do anything about the atrocities in the Congo. Um, One easy example I will give you is when there was political will, the slightest, there was change in behavior. I just referred to the use of child soldiers. There are also laws against torture and so many other laws. So it's not just the Dodd-Frank, It's not the Obama law, the 106459, Public Law 109456, that is also a U.S. law that can impact what is going on in the Congo. The child soldier law was actually used in 2012 or 2013 by the Obama administration to sanction Rwanda. It was a laughable sanction. It was $200,000. That is like the salary of somebody in the State Department. And they used that. They said that they sanctioned them because of the use of child soldiers. That was more impactful and helpful than the Dodd-Frank law in the fact that it set off in spite of how laughable that sanction was, it set off a chain reaction where global players, other donor nations, stopped sending money to Rwanda. Multiple countries stopped aid during that time. That, coupled with the international force brigade that came into the Congo, um, um, where you had I'm lost in my trend here. But I'll come back to it. With the implementation of those, like the International Force Brigade and stopping aid to Rwanda, stop the M23. At the time, the M23, which again is an extension of, it's a militia, it's an extension of that militia you talked about, the Rwandan military. They had taken over Goma, and somehow they were defeated within months without even the will to fight against them. And they went into refugee camps in Rwanda and Uganda, regrouped, and came back almost 10 years later and started over again. And they were on the same path earlier this year when the light was shining bright on their atrocities, and the whole air was sucked out of this whole thing by the peace deal, the so-called peace deal that was kicked off as a result of Rwandan troops in the thousands going into the Congo, taking over Goma and Bukavu in eastern Congo, and taking over those towns. And then there was panic, and Tshisekedi ran to Trump, and they started this peace deal, and then the momentum stopped to actually hold Rwanda, especially, accountable. Uganda has been left out of this narrative, which is very dangerous because there is no difference between Rwanda and Uganda when it comes to the invasion and occupation of Congo. And for some reason, most of the public, including Congolese people, as well as the Congolese government, they are silent on Uganda's role in what's happening in the Congo. But again, going back to the Dodd-Frank, there is other tools that can be used that would be very helpful. It's not just about trading minerals. It's about stopping even just the illicit and the plundering of these minerals. And those sanctions were a start. There are other things that can be done, like isolating Rwanda and Uganda internationally, the same way that apartheid South Africa was isolated from any international activities. Stopping any kind of monetary transactions, especially by leaders of Rwanda. This could actually bring it to a stop before we even go to this Dodd-Frank Act that talks about supply chains. Lastly, I'll give another quick example, and I hope you can interact with me on this one. In 2020, this is to show when there is political will that things can get done without needing to close your eyes to the crime of invading, raping, killing, plundering, and then you start to intervene at the supply chain after all of that has happened. Here's an example of when it comes to political will, where political will makes a difference, especially, but because The reason why it works is because Paul Kagame and Yoweri Museveni are the West's the West um, they are the
Puppets.
mercenaries. They are Western mercenaries on the ground. They are local mercenaries for the West in the region, but also on the continent. When you look at where they send their troops, not only in Congo, you have them in Mozambique, in Cabo Delgado. Rwandan troops are over there securing French oil. Total, um, oil interest. They are the Ugandans are doing that in Congo. They are securing Total's um, oil interest in the Congo. You have Rwandan troops in the Central African Republic. They were in Mali at one point during the last, when Mali was highly destabilized. They were in Darfur. You have Ugandan troops, I believe, in Somalia, if I'm not mistaken. Rwandan troops were previously in Sudan and Haiti. So these are the mercenaries of the West. They are hired and used. And so there isn't political will to hold them accountable. Now, what does it look like when there is political will to hold them accountable? You remember in 2020, a man by the name Paul Rusesabagina, who the film Hotel Rwanda, for those who have seen the film, Hotel Rwanda was made about this man, Paul Rusesabagina, who used the hotel that he managed as shelter for people to shelter and they flee the genocide because he has spoken about Kagame's atrocities against Rwandans and Congolese. Kagame wants his head. And what Kagame did, and by the way, this was on the heels of many years of many of Kagame's supporters coming at us saying, hey, we'll get you and we'll get you. You're all going to find yourselves in Rwanda. All of a sudden, during COVID in 2020, we see Paul Rusesabagina paraded in front of media, in front of cameras, with a mask on in Rwanda. It was a shock. Somehow they found a way to lure him from Texas. He went to Dubai and they hired a private jet. They use his friend, which is very common. The Rwandan government is notorious for using friends and family to trap people or to even sometimes take them out, for assassination. They'll go as and there are books about this and things like that. They'll go as far as going to a wife or husband to take out their own spouse just to carry out that mission. So they take Paul Rusesabagina to Rwanda. They put him on a sham trial, sentence him to 25 years. Oh, by the way, there was this shameful American professor who went there as a witness. I forget her name. I would give you the name now, but I'm forgetting the name of that witness. And she actually used to be a part of his foundation at one point. Now, they put on a sham trial. They sentenced him to 25 years. By the way, they tortured him. They refused. They prevented him from getting his medicine. And this is a cancer survivor who also has other health issues. And Kagame, in December 2022, he swore up and down. I think maybe it was November. It was late 2022. He goes, Paul Rusesabagina will never leave Rwanda. It will take an invasion to get him out of here. And guess what happened? Less than 6 months later, well, guess where Paul Rusesabagina is right now? Can you
Probably
tell?
in the US.
He's in Texas chilling with his family.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what it took? The US threatened to withhold $90 million in aid to the regime, the dictatorship in Rwanda. So it doesn't really take, like when there is political will, we don't need to get to the Dodd-Frank, part where it's like, okay, yeah, commit all those crimes and then we'll just worry about what you do with what you steal. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, if I may chime in, and I think just to give context also, that Paul Rusesabagina is, at least at the time, a permanent resident of the United States, which means, and that was the arguments of many senators, including the Secretary of State at that time, I think it was Blinken, if I'm not mistaken. They wanted to expand. There was a new law that the U.S. was trying, or a new policy, I will say, that the U.S. was trying to implement, trying to bring home all American citizens that were held in captivities overseas. So there was a conversation to expand that law or that policy in order to also include permanent residents. And I think they ended up doing that. And that's why it was very key to advocate for somebody who was portrayed as a hero, because he's a hero that everybody knows. And you mentioned that Hotel Rwanda. But I think what was also shocking is like how he was actually captured. That they lured him into an entire plan, and he thought that he was going to land in Burundi or another country, but ended up being in Rwanda. Can you imagine, like, if Kagame wants you today, and then you're just booking your flight to, I don't know, go to, to the East Coast and enjoy Congo week with Friends of the Congo, for example, and then they decided, well, Kagame decided to buy people the entire Delta airplane so that they can just capture you. That's just crazy. Like how the ground government went above and beyond just to capture this man just because he was speaking the truth. So yeah, I want you to continue. Sorry.
Yeah, shout out to Congo Week. Can't wait. It's starting next week, right?
Yes,
Uh,
and I will give more information later, but yes.
yeah, yep. So I'll be definitely doing my part as part of Congo Week, and I know you're gonna be doing your part. But back to Paul Rusesabagina. So the context you gave, you're talking about what the U.S. was doing in general, but that's not the only case, and it's not the only case with Rwanda. So I give that because it's the most famous one that most people can find on the internet. There are people here literally who go to Rwanda just to visit their families. When they get there, they are captured and tortured. And then the US embassy has to intervene. It's not the first time that they've had to intervene to let somebody out. Um, they like, I know these cases, and the State Department and embassies have to, they keep doing this. Again, this is when there is political will, because these people are either residents or citizens, like naturalized citizens of the US. They are some US diplomats that actually go to Rwanda, they harass them, they follow them everywhere. The US ends up having to put them, like, to send them to other places. That's also happened in the past. There was a woman who went to Rwanda from England, from the UK. UK is one of the biggest donors to Rwanda. They disappeared her. And when the story became public, the UK said that they would use, they said that they would use GPS to find her. There were, all of a sudden, the Rwandan government had the embassy go to the morgues, to the jails, to the hospitals, to all kinds of places to go and find her. And they couldn't find her. And they said, oh, we don't know where they are, where she is. But then all of a sudden, when they said, oh, yeah, we're going to use the GPS to find her, she emerged. They turned her over. She went back to the UK.
Wow.
She's back with her family. So there are many stories of, like, kidnappings, either inside of Rwanda or outside of Rwanda. Many people have been kidnapped outside of Rwanda. Many people have been taken out outside of Rwanda. The story you were showing of the Spanish indictment, I was reading the names: Paul Kagame, James Kabarebe, Kayumba Nyamwasa, James Karamba, Theonest Lizinde. Theonest Lizinde was assassinated in Kenya.
Wow.
And we have a story from a conversation I had with one of Paul Kagame's former bodyguard that actually is story number 13, Alois Ruyenzi. We, in that conversation, he names all of those names. When I was reading those names on the screen, I remembered the article, and that's when I reached out, and I remembered the conversation. That's when I reached back and got this book, and they're all in there. Those were part of the meeting to shoot down the plane which was the very first act of the Rwandan genocide. The assassination of the two presidents was the Burundian and the Rwandan president was the first murder in the
And
Rwandan genocide.
if I may, I really want to read that passage, right, in your book.
Mhm.
And he says that I met Alois Rienzi, a former bodyguard to Paul Kagame. We shared our story, and he told me why he decided to leave Rwanda. He has made sure to expose the injustice he saw while he was in the RPF. He believes that making the truth public will contribute to the future he hoped Rwanda would have when he joined the RPF as a teenager. Rienzi shared a number of key facts that he witnessed during the war leading up to genocide, as well as the things that he witnessed post genocide. One of the most important things he witnessed was the meeting chaired by Paul Kagame, who at the time was a rebel leader of the RPF. Other attendees included the following officer. Uh, uh, those names gonna kill me. Colonel Kayumbi Nyamwasa, Theones Lizinde, Colonel James Kabarebe, Major Jacobs Tumwine, Captain Charles Karamba. In that meetings, Paul Kagame asked Colonel Lizinde to present his report. Colonel Lizinde showed him a map of places to shoot the plane. According to Ruyenzi, the meeting took place at Mulindi on March 31st, 1994. On April 6th, 1994, President Juvenal Habyarimana's plane was shot down, killing him and everyone else on board, including the Burundian president Cyprien Ntaryamira. According to Rienzi, Kagame was watching a soccer game when the plane was shot. As soon as they heard about the shooting of the plane, some who were present at the time shouted in celebration. Then they activated and began to move. The war restarted, and the Arusha peace accord that were being negotiated to end the war did not get implemented. After the RPF won the war, Rienzi remained among Kagame's bodyguards. On his days off, he would visit various places and began to wonder if the stories of how horribly Tutsi were treated were true. This was the case when he noticed that large properties of prominent Tutsis such as Ubangura, Sisi Evariste, Asinapol Wigara, Shamukiga, and many others, who were some of the wealthiest individuals prior to the RPF taking over Rwanda. Although he had begun fighting as a child soldier, beginning with the NRM in Uganda under Uganda's President Museveni and then joining the RPF as one of the initial fighters, he understood that the privilege of a few may not be fully representative of a whole ethnic group. But this realization, along with seeing some of this wealth, made him question some of the propaganda he had heard. In the late 90s, Huyenzi was assigned to go to Congo as well as to Ruhengeri and Gisenyi in northern Rwanda to provide special report to Paul Kagame, who was Rwanda's vice president and minister of defense at the time. Ruyenzi witnessed widespread massacres of civilians in the Congo, as well as Ruhengeri and Gisenyi. RPF soldiers were carrying out mass killing of civilians well beyond the scope of fighting a war. There was so much zeal to the killing that even RPF soldiers who refused to massacre civilians were dismissed or disappeared, never to be seen again. He reported these atrocities. Instead of taking actions on the atrocities, they instead tagged Elor Rienzi as a collaborator of the enemy. After this accusation, there were at least three attempts to assassinate him. Two of the attempts were ambush set up to shoot and kill him. He survived, but at least one of his colleagues was killed in these ambushes. I do not recall if there was more than one casualty, but he shared with me that one ambush had killed a driver. The third attempt never occurred because one of the people assigned to kill him tipped him off and he fled Rwanda instead. Rienzi was very distraught by what he witnessed because it was counter to his reason for joining the RPF and fighting war. His vision was a country of rights that respects human lives and treated everyone with dignity. Instead, he saw that the army he had fought with was becoming a band of killers. When he reported the massacre of civilians, he was ostracized and survived assassination attempts. In the end, he vowed to share all the information he has to make sure that the truth is told and justice is that the truth is told and justice is served in order to build a peaceful Rwanda. He continues to share his testimony when right occasion arise. He has given his testimony in various court cases and was also part of the BBC film called Rwanda's Untold Story. That's powerful, very powerful.
Yeah, that's when you were when I looked at the document on the screen and you called out all those names, and I was like, this, is very in line with Alois Rienzi, like the names that I heard in that testimony, and you just you just read them. Shout out to Sister Teddy, thank you for sharing the stream. I see you, and love from Rwandans and Congolese sisters and brothers to you all in Ethiopia. So,
Yeah. Shout
but
out to Sister Teddy. But I think, yeah, guys, if you haven't done so, go ahead and please buy this book on Survivors Uncensored. It is literally the story, 100 testimonies from survivors, 100 of them, more than 100 of them. So you can hear directly from genocide survivors. And Brother Claude, when I was talking to you a couple days ago, you were trying to talk about how there was strength and power into sharing. And then you said something very interesting that really, stuck with me until today. You said that when you get slapped, you know what being slapped means. To, you don't need, when you get
now
slapped,
you need validation. You don't need
exactly,
anybody.
you don't need validation. You don't need any academic terms. You know exactly what being slapped mean.
Mhm.
Do you think that there is, even from the media, from mainstream media, even from Congolese themselves, and even Rwandan citizens themselves, do you think that there is an attempt to somehow silence the voices of those who actually went through those crimes, or to not really censor them, but like, you know, like, let's let's tone down a little bit about how you used to describe your suffering? Or no, what you're going through is not genocide. What you're going through is not a crime against humanity. What you're going through is not a war crime. Do you think there is this attempts right now globally, or like it has been the case for the past 30 years? And then we're gonna address these comments, and I think you're gonna like it. It's Congo Unfiltered. So yeah, go ahead.
Uh, I don't think it's not think. I know it's happening, and it's not just censorship. Like we are literally on hit lists. They want to actually kill us, to silence us, which is why it's important to share and tell your story, because one of the survivors in the book, shout out Eric, forgetting his last name now, but he's based in Belgium. He once did his testimony publicly, and somebody said, "Oh yeah, you see all that stuff you said, man, they're gonna finish you for saying all that." And he goes, um, he goes, okay, so what if they finish me? What if they, they take me out? Are they also gonna kill what I said? So that's what's important. It's really important that we, the witnesses, we, the survivors, actually do share these stories. Yes, there is a lot of sanitizing the crimes of the RPF. There's, in Paul Kagame, there is a lot of gatekeeping, saying, oh no, that's not genocide. Well, we just read the definition of genocide. They've done all of these things on such a large scale. Some of the massacres, like the ones in Tingi Tingi, refugee camp. I mean, what else? How do you, what is the other, like, what else do you call it? So when I say to you that when you get slapped, you know the definition of slapping, and you know what slapping is. You know who did the slapping, you know who got slapped, you know that slapping happened. And it's the same as if we all agree that this is what constitutes the color red, like the t-shirt I'm wearing. There are people who will try and twist themselves into a pretzel to tell me that no, that's not red, it's orange, or it's purple, it's, it's off red, it's, it's pink. They will find everything. Sometimes they go even as crazy as that's not red, that's green. You
Like
know,
this guy, like this guy who said, let me put this one. He said that the story that I just read was not written by genociders, not there. It's not written by genociders, not survivors. Ask Claude who his father is.
yeah.
It's getting a little bit
Okay.
feisty on the comment section here. Calling you a bunch of clown, calling us a bunch of clown. NGO hit list. Wait, what?
Okay.
NGO hit
Yeah.
list? Okay, that's a death
Well,
threat.
yeah.
I don't understand.
Oh, well, he's saying go hit list. That's a Kinyarwanda
Oh,
thing. The saying,
oh, okay, okay.
yeah, something like a bunch of
See,
clowns talking about hit list.
okay.
But but anyway, yeah, that we used to that. That's nothing. You know how in the Lion King, there is a scene where like the hyenas are like laughing and laughing and laughing, and then the lion, I can't remember which one it was, goes, "I'm surrounded by idiots."
You're actually
You know?
making a good point because again, when you commit a crime, it's individual, right? Like why? Like he keeps saying that oh, there are genociders. I really want to know what, because I have interacted in a space hosted by Friends of the Congo before, co-hosted by me, during which I asked specific questions to
Mhm.
pro Kagame's folks, right? That who is the genociders? They tend to they keep saying the FDLR are genociders and blah blah. And I'm like, the FDLR wasn't even around when the genocide was committed. That's one. And
Mhm.
and then
Yeah.
two, why does it matter who the parent is? Like, why does it even matter if your dad was a military officer in the army?
Well,
If if the RPF came into your house, killed your mom, killed your siblings, what? Who cares who your dad was? Who cares who
well,
your mom was?
first of all, my father was not in the military. My
Yeah,
father was
I'm
not.
not saying that. I was just saying that why is it even relevant to the conversation that we're having about
Yeah.
talking about war crimes and crimes against humanity and genocide?
Right, right. He wasn't even in Rwanda when the genocide happened. He had been out of there for years. So that's how ridiculous some of this is. But you know how it is. Um, what I call this, like when people start making up stories,
Mm.
throwing poop on the wall to see what sticks, or throwing poop on somebody to see if any of it sticks. That stuff doesn't stick because, like you said, first of all, even if what they say about my father is true, let's just say, for the sake of this conversation, say, okay, he did that. What does that have to do with me? Like,
Exactly my point.
what does that have to do with me at all?
Hmm.
Um, Secondly, we know Paul Kagame is a mass murderer. He is a genocide perpetrator who just happens to be a president also because he's taken over a country by force. But we don't talk about his children. His children have nothing to do with him being a criminal. If they get involved, or once they start getting involved, then they have their own record. His wife has his own record. Like, we don't know the names of these generals, James Kabarebe and Kayumba Nyamwasa, or
Or Adele, the president,
Nyamvumba.
former president of the Maho Peace Association. We don't know her
We
dad.
don't
Like
know.
who is?
We don't know. Everybody has their own record, and I found it like I think the person was, I maybe they were self-describing. Sometimes people say things that is just a mirror of themselves. It's very clown
Mm-hmm.
behavior and clown argument to talk about another person, um, and try to basically create, just because somebody happens to be related to another person is then, somehow, whatever they accuse them of is they associate with that person. Third thing is the Rwandan government pursues people for crimes of genocide everywhere around the world. There are people in the US on trial for genocide crimes. How come they've never like tried to go after my father? We have dared them, asked them, come on, bring it to court. What is going to happen to you is that the judge is going to curse you out of that court. You're going to get laughed at out of that court by every single person observing. So try it. Try it.
Yeah,
For
try.
me, that
And
is,
and
I,
what you said, what you saying is actually very accurate to how propaganda works, right? Because you need to have a narrative out there, and for that narrative to sustain, for that narrative to remain as truth, because if it's the only narrative out there, people will take it as truth. But once it start getting challenged by people like you, people like me, then they have no other choices but to try to discredit the person, discredit you by calling you a genocidaire, discrediting me by saying that I eat flesh, that I'm like, I want to show you this because it was really crazy, and I was like, wait, what? Like, how do we get to this point? Let me share you this.
Mhm,
Nah, there you go. So early this year,
mhm.
Mario Naufal, he reached out to Friends of the Congo and me and wanted to put up create a space about the Congo, because President Trump was contemplating hosting or trying to have signed a peace deal. So they wanted they wanted to host a space so that they could inform better the Trump administration regarding the issue. So on that panel, there was me, myself. There was the executive director of Friends of the Congo. There was also internationals.
I
Samuel,
was
I think Samuel
I
Baker, I
was on there
believe.
also. I was on there
Yeah,
also. Yeah.
exactly. So
Mhm.
we were there speaking about that, and again, we never paid a dime. I was contacted. We were contacted. They reach out to us, say, "Hey, we're gonna do a space. Can you come to our space and speak?"
Yeah.
And Mario, he hosted one of the largest space for English speaking countries, right? The
Yeah.
largest space on X. And
I've been on a
after,
few of his. I've spoken on a
yes,
few of his
yes,
panels
and
before. Yeah.
after that space, during which we were trying to deconstruct or debunk the lies or the narratives coming from Paul Kagame. Few months later, he maybe a month, I would say a month later, he posted this. One of my most heart-wrenching trips and most authentic presidential interviews. Guess the country. He was in Rwanda. Like a month after we did that space, we had what, 250,000 view.
Mhm.
Paul Kagame invited him so that he could give his perspective, which he has all the rights, right, as a head of state. Which, by the way, I was really angry that the Congolese government didn't do the same uh, work. But anyways, so when he posted this, I reply say, whatever lies Paul Kagame told you in that interview, we are fully prepared to deconstruct and expose them. The international community represented within the United Nations, the International Court of Justice, and the International Criminal Court, along with credible organizations such as Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, Global Witness, and even the US and UK governments have all documented the truth. We stand ready to challenge Kagame's deception with facts and evidence. This is kind of like the response that I got. Oh, I'm trying to look for that. This person, Les Miserables, and you in
I mean,
America,
I guess the name speaks for itself.
yes, Les Miserables, miserables, the miserables. And I don't know if it's a she or a he. I'm just gonna say they. That person just tweeted and responded and said, "You are eating humans for who they are, but you think that your conjecture matters." I was like, oh, hold on, wait, what? I'm eating humans?
Yeah, yeah.
My brother out here he responded, "Come on with better lie. Like, come on, bro. Like, come on. I'm eating humans because they
Well,
are unable
okay.
to
Now,
deconstruct the narrative or even trying to address the point. Then now they go into attacking us. That's
well,
insane, bro.
speaking of cannibalism, the in recent times there's been conversations within Rwandans. Kenya Rwanda is not a very widely spoken language. It's only spoken by maybe like 20 million people around. All together, if you put Kenya Rwanda, Kirundi, and everybody that understands that language, which is all in that region, right around Rwanda and Burundi. There was this one woman who was one of the regime's most outspoken, most morbid, extremist Tutsi and supremacists. Definitely the type of people she hated the most were Tutsis who didn't want to align with that supremacist, ethno-fascist, um, the ethno-fascist regime and behavior. That's who she hated. She hated Hutus the most, and the second on her list were Tutsis like that. This lady, Ingabire Marie Immaculate, her whole history on Twitter, celebrating people being killed in the Congo and injustices in Rwanda. Kizito Mihigo, I have her audios and videos and things that she said about them. She just passed. There was a time, one of the things that's come up is there's this one woman who is one of those Tutsi genocide survivors who is unwilling to fall in line with the regime. Her name is Yvonne Idamange, and she's in prison in Rwanda because in 2021, on her YouTube channel, she denounced the injustices happening to Rwandans, and they put her in prison, put her on trumped-up charges, including denying genocide that she actually survived. Same thing that they try to paint me with, right? um, they sentenced her to 15 years. Her torture included and includes, this is why these like sexual crimes in the Congo, it's not just, this isn't something that started in the Congo. This is something that was practiced and continues to be practiced in Rwanda by this regime. It's something that was started in Uganda before the regime even started, before they formed, when they were part of Museveni's army. The woman's torture includes not letting her clean up when she's on her periods. They had her in handcuffs for days
Wow.
and nights when they first arrested and jailed her. They sentenced her to 15 years in
Wow.
prison. So now she's on year number 4, almost 5 in a few months. And she only spoke for like 2 weeks. That was it, and then they put her in prison. Now, where I was going is that one of the regime's mouthpieces, one of the things that's come up about this one woman who was the leader of Rwanda's Transparency International, Ingabire Marie Makile is her name, um, is how when this woman, when Idamange was speaking and denouncing the injustices, somebody came out and said that, it's another woman, by the way, said that she wished that she could literally sink her teeth into her and chew her, like literally chew her, you know. Basically, what the saying was, what the saying was, namhekenya, which means to
Mm.
literally like put in your mouth and chew. And so when you speak about cannibalism, this miserable uh, person that wrote to you, that's what the name says, right? That miserable person who was accusing you of eating people for who they are is actually a reflection of what the regime's mentality and practice is. It's a mirror.
So they make people do that. They make people eat flesh, like human flesh.
The woman herself said she wished to eat the flesh of the activist who spoke up. And so what I'm saying is they accuse you of um, being or eating people, when in fact their own authorities are the ones who say things like that. It's what I'm saying. But as
Mm,
far as so it's a mirror. It's kind of a mirror argument.
that's insane. And and I know we're kind of going like off topic, but I have to ask you this. I have to ask you this question. Within the Rwandan community overseas, in the diaspora here in the US or in France or in Europe, in Canada, just out of curiosity, are you guys, because obviously this dude is being blowing our comment section and just spewing hate, spewing hate. I really want to know if you guys are organized in terms of tribes, ethnicities in the diaspora. Like, are you guys in the US? When you guys come together at Rwandan people, is it among Tutsis in one side, among Tutsis on the other, or are you guys united? I'm really curious about the dynamic when it comes to the Rwandan diaspora, if I may.
Yeah, and if you don't mind sharing some of those comments, I think it's important that the audience sees the type of hate that we're describing, that is spewed by the regime and their um, look, okay, I see the comment. This guy is
It, it's
claiming
it's
that my
it's
father was hunting
it's
people.
just ridiculous, man.
So
Like
how
some of those
my father,
comments.
my father was hunting people using a remote control or what? Because he wasn't even in Rwanda. But anyway, back to the what you're saying, what you're asking. Actually, my understanding of the communities, I know for sure here in the U.S. And I don't know where this dude actually lives, but here in the U.S., it's not along ethnic lines. People, we don't even know what ethnicity a person is, and many of us come from mixed backgrounds. So you can't. Where are you gonna go? Your family is a mix. Is a mixed family anyway. So that's number one. But secondly, in the U.S., the way that the communities generally are organized is based on when they came. So people who came, say, 30 years ago are more likely to be close, which again, that's going to be across ethnic groups. People who came 20 years ago are more likely to be close. People who came 5 years ago are more likely to be close. And the people who came 30 years ago may not even know the people who just came. That's how it is in the US. Like the question of ethnicity is not really much of any question at all. What I understand now, which initially I was like, when the person told me about it in Canada, like the communities were divided along ethnicity. I didn't at first, I was like, no way, because that wasn't my experience here in the US. And then, eventually I came to understand, yes, it is divided. And it became even more glaring when they had a memorial service for Kizito when Kizito was killed, and they had a memorial service in Ottawa, and they basically ran it like if it was done by the Rwandan government. They muzzled everybody. You couldn't take pictures, you couldn't take videos, you couldn't speak, you couldn't do anything. You just had to show up and do like a mass. It was a Catholic mass, and then go to a reception and just interact, socialize. Which, for me, it's like pooping on the memory of the person and trampling on the grave of that person who actually just got assassinated. But in any case, that's Canada. In Europe, especially in Belgium, I don't know about the other countries. I'm not sure about the UK, but in Belgium, it's also there. It's divided along ethnic lines for the most part. That's what I've come to understand and see. Now, here in the US, and all over the world, there are also communities of extremist and um, supremacist Tutsis that want their own separate things. They usually meet in this group called Ibuka. Ibuka has been dissolved, but they still have all of these chapters. Ibuka is a gathering of extremist Tutsis who usually will fabricate things like what we're seeing in the comments to go after people, sometimes on trumped up charges. Um, they harass refugees. They try to break up, and apparently in Canada it was really, really bad at one point, where like when young people would try to organize themselves, like Ibuka would jump in there and do everything to destroy what they were doing. And they had different names, in fact, that they would use at times. There's also other groups that some Rwandans, out of ignorance, actually do join, and others who are part of the ideology of the government actually know, and sometimes on the payroll of the government, they know about these. It's called the Rwandan community abroad in
Mm.
general, as at large. But then in different cities, there's a Rwandan community in Nashville, Rwandan community in Atlanta, Rwandan community in Boston, Rwandan community in Phoenix, or Rwandan community in Dallas, Rwandan community of the DMV, Rwandan community of Belgium, Rwandan community of Stockholm or Sweden, whatever. These groups are managed by Rwanda's Foreign Affairs Ministry. It's part
Mm.
is a branch of the
So
government.
they get funding from
And
the Rwandan government.
not just funding orders, they are
Wow.
managed by the embassies. Some of their
Just like
members,
Maho Peace Association.
there you go. You got it. You got it. And they what they do is now, by the way you're saying it, people would know it's Mahoro. The H is
Mahoro.
actually
Yes.
pronounced in
My
Mahoro Peace
bad.
Association. Yeah,
Mahoro. Yes.
yeah.
Them.
This group RCAs, Rwanda Community Abroad, are they are a part of the Rwandan Foreign Affairs Ministry. They are managed by the embassies in the countries that they're in. But they pretend to be just community organizations, even though they are full of people who are doing surveillance and basically spying on the community. Well, I
This
see a
guy's
comment
on your
asking
ass,
for the
man.
evidence.
This Cedric.
Yeah. Okay, well, he wants the evidence. It's online. Go ahead and just put in Rwanda community abroad and see what the definition is. I mean, you can pull it up, Geta.
Yes.
Put
Yes.
in Rwandan community abroad. What is it? And you will see it's a branch of the government. And again, the people who are part of it, some of them are in there, like ignorantly giving information to the Rwanda government. They use it also as a way to gatekeep people, to give them benefits. Like when you go to Rwanda and you've gone through this type of organization, you will then have some.
I don't want to click on it because I don't trust the link, but it has right there governor.rw. So that's around the website.
Yeah. It's a Rwanda government website right there.
Mm-hmm.
Rwanda
Yep.
community
Yep. Right here.
abroad.gov.rw.
Yep.
Yeah, and if you
Case closed.
scroll down and see, you might see some more definitions or something like that. There you go, MINAFET, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, right there.
Yeah.
So I
Yep.
hope this guy who is actually exposing his own ignorance understands. Like when we put out information, we know. This is why I
Exactly.
don't like this thing of saying this is alleged. We know these things, you
This
know.
guy's just not intelligent. Now he's like, oh, show us how he's getting funded. But obviously, it's a department. It's a body of the Rwanda Minister of Foreign Affairs. So they definitely have the budget.
Yeah,
Anyways,
and
that's
even
what I
if
was
they
telling you,
weren't,
bro. Like sometimes some of the comments are just plain like stupid. I don't want to put it up there. It just doesn't make sense. But hey, sometimes we need to entertain some of those bots, right? Or some of those like trolls. So
no, it's not just that. I think it's important to show the world how these trained. By the way, we also have a chapter in this book with somebody who was one of those trolls. Maybe there's multiple, but one of them talks about, because that person ended up like in the elite company, like in the selection, the Rwandan Youth RYC, the Rwandan Youth Conference, I think is what it's called, or NYC, or National Youth Conference.
mhm.
In that part, um, the person talks about like the training they get. They are told to do things like this: go online and troll. Obviously, there's been reports in recent times showing that not only do they use humans, they're also using AI. They're using bots to come and be an online troll army. I have recordings of like trainings that they have to go shut down like a number of TikTok, uh, uh, TikTok accounts. Like I have these things. Um, so it's important that people understand that when these things are happening, the reason why somebody like that cannot really engage or even make a comment, make a real like intelligent comment, and they're asking questions like show evidence, and then the evidence is right there. Like, who asks for evidence that you can simply Google right there and find?
Exactly.
You
Hmm.
know, those type of things are. I'm sure maybe they might actually go and remove some of these. So part of our work is to always to archive information. Um, we've already pulled some of these, so it's already archived and documented. Um,
Question
so
from Miss Cabina.
mhm.
Cabina, I hope, and I apologize if I'm butchering your name. Miss Cabina, what do they want to achieve by doing all this?
uh, who is she referring to? Who's Miss
I
Cabina?
think the trolls.
Cabina
I
referring?
guess I think the trolls. The people
Well,
just lie.
remember, what is the most important, biggest job for a criminal after they commit a crime?
The what? Sorry.
What is the most important thing that a criminal engages in after they commit a crime?
Their narrative. Like what's the technical term for that? Uh,
It's the cover up.
yes, the cover up. Like
They
what
are
were they
committed.
doing? Were they? Yeah.
Yeah, they're committed to the cover up. So the reason why they do all of this is to distract, is to hijack conversation, is
Mm.
to deflect, is to create confusion and to dilute the truth, is to, and to also harass people and to try to intimidate and scare people. And if that's what the question is about, if it's about like the online bots and stuff like that. Now with the Rwandan community abroad, it's to surveil and basically create formal and informal informants to share and help them get information on the community, for them to have access to potentially harm people, to carry out their uh, transnational repressions. They need that. Rwanda is one of those places where human intelligence, and Kagame said this himself, is used, and when I say intelligence, it's surveillance, is what I'm talking about, is used very, very vastly. They have this thing, they have monitoring and surveillance down to 10 homes, to 10 houses. They actually have authorities known as nyumba kumi. That's a Swahili term for 10 houses. They have like people who are surveilling every 10 houses. So abroad, they also do that through the Rwanda community abroad. If you're asking about why does Ibuka do what they do, Ibuka is partly a part of the, they're committed to the official narrative of the Rwandan government's genocide story, which is an incomplete story, leaves out the crimes committed by the RPF, the RPF's own participation in the genocide, and it also leaves out the fact because most of the world, they think that the RPF started when a genocide happened in 1994 and they came to stop it. They don't actually know that the RPF started in 1987, started a war in Rwanda in 1990, killed, raped, and stole from people, displaced over 1 million people within Rwanda way before the genocide even started. And so I just wanted to answer that question in the most extensive way because I'm not sure which one of these things that we talked about that she was referring to. But again, a criminal's biggest job after committing the crime or even in the middle of committing the crime is the cover up. And that's why they do that. And that's why this guy wants to talk about my father instead of talking about the crimes that the RPF and Paul Kagame commits. Like,
Not just that, and I want to go back on topic because uh, this announced to the tungsten being sold directly to the United States and brought the question of the Dodd-Frank Act that I mentioned, and I wanted to be able to share that with folks um, before we wrap up because I think it's very important, and it's that was archived from like years ago, but I'm also gonna show. But I wanted to put out there how he was when he was first um, created, I guess. Section 1502 requires persons to disclose annually whether any conflict minerals that are necessary to the functionality of production of a product of the person, excuse me, as defined in the provision originated in the Democratic Republic of the Congo or an adjoining country, and if so, to provide a report describing, among other matters, the measures taken to exercise due diligence on the source and chain of custody of those minerals, which must include an independent private sector audit of the report that is certified by the person filing the report. Certain aspects of this rulemaking will require consultation with other federal agencies, including the State Departments, the Government Accountability Office, and the Commerce Departments. Persons are now required to comply with these rules until the first full fiscal year after the date on which the Commission issues the final rule. So that's 1502. And you don't think that having to bypass the specific policy, the specific law, I would say, will not make things worse in the Congo? Because I follow what you were saying about the crack. Um, so you really don't think that if they get rid of this section, that things will not get worse in the Congo?
Um, well, like I said before, the U.S. and Rwanda's Western partners, Paul Kagame's employers, the people who are pushing and helping the political cover and the diplomatic cover and giving funding to Paul Kagame and stopping the isolation, the international isolation of the regime and all of that, they have no political will to actually take part in holding Rwanda accountable. So I think it's one of those, again, like I said before, crack and cocaine, same drug, different users. Crack black people, the powder cocaine used by white people, and the way they apply the laws is different. The sentencing laws are different. When there is political will, you wouldn't even need that section. There is already Rwanda's already been trading these minerals on the global market at a very large scale that is very obvious to anybody that
Hmm.
they are plundering Congolese resources. Also, this is about supply chain. It's not even about where the fact that the crimes are happening to begin with. It's like, oh yeah, go ahead and commit crime. We just won't buy from you, but somebody else could buy
Hmm.
from you and then get it over here. Um, so personally, I think there has to be more. The thing that I pushed for before, and I did state this for years, this isn't a new thing. I'm not, like just coming up with something brand new. I always said that the thing that the Congolese government should have done when they had control of the borders with Rwanda and Uganda, that they should have closed those borders. That would have created
Absolutely.
leverage. That would have, but I know that the Congolese government won't do it because right now they're not even calling out Uganda. So they would not, they're not going to close those borders even if they had the ability to do that. Now Rwanda and Uganda have taken over those borders. But for me, if they did that, that would have escalated with all of these companies that are benefiting from these stolen minerals, and then they would run back to their own governments and say, "Hey, look, can you make this? Can you get this resolved?" But the Congolese government didn't do it, and so now Rwanda has taken over the borders. They've taken over Raya. They've taken over many other mining towns, and the Ugandans too. And so the next piece of leverage still has to be about both political and economic. And until there is that political will to do that, I don't find it to be a very helpful thing. I can see maybe a few companies saying, "Yeah, I don't want to get into trouble with the Dodd Frank, Act." But for the most part, um, capitalism and greed that's associated with the capitalism will not will not be stopped until there is enough. We know what's going to get us there is really achieving the critical mass numbers of people that we need, which is, we're getting there, but it takes time. It takes time to build. It takes time to get to the point where the world understands who the perpetrators are and who's financing them and things like that. I mean, look at Israel now. I mean, there are people who even up until a year ago, let alone 15, 20 years ago, or 5 years ago, when the conversation started, they would just, they would start the both siding argument. Oh, both sides are wrong. Both sides are wrong. We know who's committing genocide now. We know who the world is seeing committing genocide now. And in the end, um, as you can see, the world is now aware, and it's inevitable that change will come. That's what happened with apartheid South Africa. That's what happened with many radical change movements that happened in the past, including the civil rights and the abolitionist movement against slavery, and many, many other changes that we've seen in the past. But that's also why it's important to have conversations like this, so that more and more people understand and know what is happening. And more and more people then, as they are informed, they start taking a position. This is not a What is happening in the Congo is not something where you can be in the middle. Again, you asked me the question earlier, are there gatekeepers and stuff like that? I see people in academia that are like, yeah, when I hear about the RPF, I hear them calling themselves angels, and I hear like their opponents calling them devils, and I just like try to stay right in the middle. You cannot stay in the middle of injustice. That's just playing right into the injustice. And what we have in the Congo is not something where you can just say, oh, supply chain is the problem. Really? What about the crimes themselves that are happening, that you actually are providing the funding, you are training the perpetrators, you are providing them with political cover and doing everything but to face the truth and bring the perpetrators to justice? So that's my thoughts on the Dodd-Frank Act itself. Like I said, it's a minor deterrent, but uh, a real solution is in establishing, having justice as the center, at the center of what is happening, and actually holding accountable the perpetrators, which of course there are many internal, there are many regional, and there are many international, global.
Yes. Am I on mute? No, I'm not. Oh, I'm not on mute. So there was a question, and I think we can use that as a way to close out. I don't understand what is the whole objective. What the whole objective is behind supporting Kagame's war in the Congo.
Yeah.
Rwandan perspective. I mean, you're not gonna speak on behalf of all Rwandan, so I want to have Claude Gatebuke's opinion of what's the objective
Thank you,
of
Miss.
Paul Kagame's war in the Congo.
Wait, I thought the question was about what's the objective around supporting Kagame's war in Congo, not just the war,
The,
not the objective of the war itself, because in simple
yes, I
terms, the
mean,
war.
yeah, yeah. I guess ask. I want you if you can ask both. Her question is what is the objective of supporting Kagame's war in the Congo?
Mhm.
But I think by extension we could also say what's the objective of Kagame's war in the Congo?
If you can keep the question on the screen, please,
Yes, right.
because
Yours right there.
I'll
Yeah.
start with Kagame's objective war, war in the Congo. That I don't call it just Kagame's war. Kagame is part of a criminal enterprise. The
Mhm.
RPF, our brother Kambale Musavuli calls them criminals without borders, because they started out killing people in Uganda as part of Museveni's rebellion. Some of them were child soldiers, some of them were grown. Then they went to Rwanda, committed similar crimes, took over, went to Congo, committed similar crimes, took over and lost control. And now they continue to keep control of the areas. The objectives are to occupy parts of Congo so that they can extract resources, enrich themselves personally, and also continue to claim that there is development happening and that they are efficient users of aid, when in fact, what is being built in Rwanda, for the most part, is financed by plundering resources in the Congo. That's the objective, are economic plundering of Congo's resources. So that's the objective of, I don't call it a war, it's a genocide in the Congo. And thank you for calling it Kagame's war in Congo, because some people still refer to the M23 as if it's an independent body. You have never, and I will say never. They say never. You have never seen a rebel group, not on the African continent, not in Asia, not in South America, not even the militias that we have here in America. They're not that well equipped. They don't have GPS jamming equipment. They're not that well, even from the uniforms alone and the night goggles and all of that stuff. That is a conventional army. You don't get those when you are a rebel group and get them by the thousands. So I thank you, Ms. Kabena, for referring to it as Kagame's war in Congo, although I will expand and just say it's Rwanda and Uganda's invasion and occupation of the Congo with the support of their Western partners, who happen to be their puppet masters, because both of them are puppets of the West. Now, what is the objective of people supporting Kagame's war in the Congo? A lot of Rwandans in the country are under siege. So there are multiple answers to this. We'll start with the people inside the country. Some of the people are hostages and they're just saying what the regime tells them. That one chapter, I have to figure out what that story number is in our book, Survivors Uncensored, this book. It talks about the training that they get, and people are convinced that that is a way to be patriotic, but basically to support your countries and your leaders, no, not your country, but your leaders' atrocities in another country. So
So they're
that's one.
actually getting training
Yeah,
for
people are
real?
forced. People they are trained to be online trolls, not only online but even in real life. There's this thing called itorero, or and it's, they when they're done they call them inore, INTORE. When they're doing this, they are brainwashing them. You go through they actually have like formal brainwashing camps.
That's
In fact,
crazy.
a few of these stories talk about how when they graduated high school, they would not give them diplomas until and unless they went into those brainwashing campaigns and all those brainwashing camps. It's called Itorero. There are actually people who leave places like the US and Canada and by the way, and Europe, by the way, that eventually they need to be investigated and held accountable. They go for those type of trainings also. They go for those type of brainwashing camps. So there are a lot of Rwandans who are forced and forcibly brainwashed. There are some who do it because they want to curry favor with the regime. There are some who are ethno-fascist, ethnic extremists, mostly from the Tutsi ethnic group, who will push and say that this is an ethnic war, but they are lying. It is a war of plunder. And so, if a person happens to be a bigot and an extremist, they will just simply support that war anyway, because they don't see the Congolese people as human beings, worthy of living their lives in peace. Um, you have there are other categories. um, they are people who are paid to do that. They get favors. Like I said, I'm looking to see if I can quickly find which one that story is. Maybe I could pull a quick excerpt from it, but I'm not quickly finding it. um, but in any case, that is um, that is how that's how they do it. I believe it's story number 80. 5. And also story number 86 has that some of that brainwashing things. I wish my co-author um, Patrick Rugaba uh, or even Eric Ngoga were able to join. They could speak about this because they lived many years in Rwanda, in post-genocide Rwanda. Um,
Let's have
uh,
them on the show one day.
yeah, Patrick Rugaba was actually made to go through these camps. I can't remember, but Eric, during the genocide in 1994, he was captured by the RPF, and he actually witnessed how they were separating Hutus and Tutsis and taking the Hutus and killing them. Some of his classmates, he was 13 years old when they did this. He was with one of Rwanda's generals, Dan Munyuza. It's part of his story in this book.
Do you
You
know?
know,
Do you know something interesting about Dan Munyanza? Munyanza?
yeah. Hmm.
I think he's the ambassador in Egypt right now, right?
He's the ambassador in Egypt. Yeah.
Did you know that he was the number 2 in the Congolese military intelligence in 1997?
Oh
I
yeah,
think he
yeah,
was,
yeah,
yeah, he was the
yeah.
number 2 of James Kabarebe, which is
And James
insane.
Cavallari. Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's
When you look,
crazy.
that's why on in that document. I'm not sure what version of that document you have of the Spanish
Indictment.
induction
Hmm.
indictment. There are 40 of those of those officers,
Hmm.
and the original one had 40 officers. If you go to each one of them, we can actually map their name back to a massacre site, at least one, maybe more of those massacre sites. And then if you read the book, let me see, I have In Praise of Blood by Judy River. In Praise of
Oh
Blood
yeah,
actually
Judy.
has they have a list of like the ranking, number one, Paul Kagame, number two, Kayumba Nyamwasa, number three,
Hmm.
James Kabarebe, and it goes
Yep.
down. And, this is very well documented. This history is well documented, but, people do try their best to bastardize the stories. But again, the reason why people get into this, back to the question by our sister Kabena, is these guys are trying to cover up the crimes that they committed. That's
Mm.
what it is. And so
Yeah.
they hire people to just help them with that.
And, and something very interesting, because we in 2025, we talking about tungsten being shipped to Pennsylvania in the US by
Mhm.
a company based in Rwanda that has partnerships with other American companies, right? As I mentioned in my introduction, my monologue. And when you actually read the 2021 report, and I'm going to bring this report on stage, it is Security Council. It was April 12th, 2001. It was a letter dated um, by obviously Kofi Annan. He spoke about that. He spoke about something very interesting that I think is important for me to read. That we in 2001, brother, and they said that illegal. That's the introduction. I'm just gonna read that. Illegal exploitation of the minerals. Let me probably zoom in for folks to read this with me. Okay. Illegal exploitation of the mineral and the forest resources of the Democratic Republic of the Congo is taking place at an alarming rate. Two phases can be distinguished: mass scale looting and the systematic and systemic exploitation of natural resources. It's funny because in French it actually sounds worse. Exploitation exogène et endogène, really bad. Mass scale looting. During the first phase, stockpiles of minerals, coffee, wood, livestock, and money that were available in territories conquered by the army of Burundi, Rwanda, and Uganda. I'm gonna go up. Were taken and either transferred to those countries or exported to international markets by their forces and nationals. And then the systemic and systematic exploitation. Planning and organizing were required for this phase. The systematic exploitation flourished because of the pre-existing structures developed during the conquest of powers of alliance of the Democratic Republic of the Liberation of Congo Zaire, AFDL, these pre-existing structures were improved over time, and new networks for channeling extracted resources were put in places. However, the systemic exploitation used the existing systems of control established by Rwanda and Uganda. In both cases, exploitation was often carried out in violation of the sovereignty of the DRC, the national legislation, and sometimes international law, and it led to illicit activities. Key individuals, actors, including top army commanders and businessmen on the one hand, and government structure on the other, have been the engines of this systematic and systemic exploitation. The consequences of illegal exploitation has been twofold: a massive availability of financial resources from the Rwandan Patriotic Army and the individual enrichment of top Ugandan military commanders and civilians. B. The emergence of illegal network headed either by top military officers or businessmen. These two elements form the basis of the link between the exploitation of natural resources and the continuation of the conflicts. Other contributing factors, however, exist: the roles played by some entities and institutions and the opportunistic behavior of some private companies and influential individuals, including some decision makers in the DRC and Zimbabwe. Some leaders in the region bear a direct responsibility. The panel concludes that tough measures must be taken to bring to an end the cycle of exploitation of the natural resources and continuation of the conflicts in the DRC. This was in 2001. Kofi
Okay.
Annan, may his soul rest in peace. 2001.
Is that the UN expert report?
That yes, that at that time there was not an group of experts. I think the group of experts that started the first report in 2004. That was a letter. They were just doing obviously
So
documentation, documenting, and that was what the UN Secretary General at the time, Kofi Annan, with his team, were able to provide for the issue of the Congo specifically, talking about Congolese resources
so
being
you see,
plundered. Yeah.
do you see the how they talk about the systemic and systematic plundering?
Yes.
There was a in those reports, I can't remember which year it was, because I went through all of them, the UN reports, not the Kofi Annan letter. 2001, 2002, 2003, and I read all of the other ones too. There is a description of how they were doing it. Like the Rwandan soldiers and Ugandan soldiers, especially, they would wait until like harvest was completed, like mining was done, or harvest of coffee was done, or timber, whatever it was that was being mined or harvested at the time, and stocked into the stocks, by the massive amounts. Then they would attack and take over those, and then they would just take those resources and take them to Rwanda and Uganda. There's a lot of Uganda was doing especially a lot of gold and timber. And by the way, a lot of times when people talk and they talk about, for example, like Scandinavian countries, it's like, oh, there's no mention of them being involved, but there's a lot of timber that went to those places that came from Uganda, stolen from Congo. And so these internal and external players that he's talking about, and the systemic and systematic way that it was done and is still being done, it was all around economic interest. And that's why I always ask the question, when people talk about Rwandan troops are in the Congo for the FDLR, I'm not seeing the comments pop up on the screen, so I can't tell. Oh wait, maybe I can see the comments. Yeah.
Yeah, you can
Um,
see the comment.
yeah. Um,
You was here, best
the
friends. Cedric.
Yeah, yeah, I see him. The
Oh, now I'm called Mr. Congolese. Look at that. Oh,
the 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 plundering, I mean, he's asking you like who does it more than your government, like you're a spokesperson for the government. I
Not
mean, we're
even
talking
that.
about
Like,
what
what
is
does it
actually,
matter?
we're
Stealing is
talking about what
stealing.
is happening. Yeah. So
Yeah.
in those, when Rwanda claims that the FDLR is the reason why they go to Congo, I always say, I ask the question, when has the FDLR become minerals? Every
Mm.
time you go into the Congo, you go after the minerals. Is FDLR minerals? I thought it was people.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it's like, okay, you've claimed that you've captured them, you've got them, you've brought them to Rwanda, you've reintegrated them. And at some point, General James Kabarebe, who was sanctioned by the US government earlier this year, actually, you know, said that these pose no threat to
Mm.
to Rwanda. But guess what?
All right.
They still claim that they're going to Congo to go after the FDLR. I'm
Yeah.
willing to bet for any amount of FDLR that are in the Congo, the majority of them are now a part of the Rwanda military because they recycled them and took them back into the Congo to use them as human shield.
Mm.
So, but for me, when I see how they go after the resources, and they're like, yeah, we're going after the FDLR, then I guess there must be a mineral called the FDLR that we haven't exactly figured out if FDLR is coltan, FDLR is gold, FDLR is, you know, timber, FDLR is, you know, tungsten, tin, um, cobalt, copper, lithium, you know, diamonds. I guess we need to figure out what mineral is the FDLR.
Mm. And they always make sure that when they invade the Congo, they first go to towns that they know are rich in minerals, which is very interesting and smart. That's the first stop. Let's go to
Yep.
Rubaya. Let's go to those mines, mining town or whatever. But I just want to remind folks that Congo Week is coming up. It is going to be next week, and I want to invite everyone to attend Congo Week. Check out our website, sign up if you want to organize Congo Week where you are. We want you to be able to break the silence with us regarding the exploitation, the illegal exploitation of the Congo, regarding the massacre, regarding the displacement of the displacement of the population. And if if you want to help out, if you want to be involved, please sign up. And I'm gonna put bottom top left a barcode for you all to be able to join and to be able to understand first what is Congo Week, why we talk about Congo Week today. And you can literally just not just today, but since 2008, I believe. And you can scan that on the on your with your phone. You'll be able to have access to more information regarding Congo Week. But it is uh, going to be from the 19th to the 25th. Please sign up and help us organize, attend if you can, trying to see the type of events uh, that we have around. And to me, it's very important to do the Congo Week. I think the initiatives was itself commendable. Like that, I really appreciate being able to have 1 week dedicated to talk about the Congo, not just talk about the Congo, but talk about Congolese issues, and most importantly, how you as an individual can play a role, how you as an individual can be active into bringing peace and justice in the Congo. 2008, folks, the OGs at Friends of the Congo said that they were going to galvanize, right, the participation of people. Have people, how can people be involved and participate? And that's when Congo-speaking tours started and trying to go to campuses. But most particularly for Congo Week, the purpose of the Congo Week was or has been to raise global consciousness about the situation in the Congo. And obviously, because the Congo has not been at peace, not in the 32 years of age that I am right now, not at peace. The Congo has not been at peace. Congo has not known justice. And the human dignity of the Congolese people have been reduced to absolutely nothing, not just from the neighbors, Rwanda, Uganda, and other countries in the past, like Burundi, like it was mentioned in 2001 report, not from the international community that current Secretary General Antonio Guterres said in 2007 that the international community has consistently plundered the Congo. Consistently, the international community consistently, systematically plundered the Congo. Collectively, we have deprived Congo of not just the resources, but also the dignity. So, Congo Week was created to emphasize or shed a light on those events. And there are different themes that we tackle throughout the week. On Sunday, like I like to say, we start with a vigil or prayers, depending on what you believe in, and we try to host events and trying to call for peace because we want to remind people that the Congo is at war. The Congo desperately needs peace, right? That's Sunday. Then we get to Monday, and Monday it's usually about the history of the Congo from Leopold II. And as Americans are watching this, it's important to also know the role that America played into the creation of the Congo Free State, which was given to Leopold II, King Leopold II, as his own property to facilitate the plunder of the Congo. It's important to know the role of the American government. It's important to know the involvement of American authors and activists that stood, just like Friends of the Congo today, since 2004 has been doing, stood beside the Congolese people and trying to amplify their voice or the plight for justice. And we do speak about that history. We do have proposal. We do suggest a few books for people to read. The From Leopold to Congo, From Leopold to Kabila, A People's History by Professor George Nzongola. King Leopold's Ghost, Adam Hochschild, that talks about how Congolese people were, I will say, genocide during that time. 10 to 15 million. Half of the Congolese population at that time died with hands cut off. King Leopold's Soliloquy by Mark Twain, and many other books that we talk about. And then on Tuesday, we go into Lumumba and trying to honor the very first democratically elected leader of the Congo. Talk about the ideas and teachings that made Patrice Lumumba the number one public enemy of the United States, of France, of other countries, Belgium included, obviously, that led to his assassination. It's very important for us to talk about not just not just the history of the story around Lumumba, but also his legacy, right? And there was a film that we proposed, and then from Raoul Peck, which is called Lumumba, a very interesting film, and we've had him on Friends of the Congo before, not Congo Unfiltered, but I will definitely try to have him back to have a conversation regarding his thought of what his thought of Lumumba. Why was he so much feared at the point that he was killed and his body was placed into acid. A very interesting person, an icon for Africa, Patrice Lumumba, and that's on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, we explore the mineral exploitation part, the technology and the green energy. And we're speaking about companies right now that are dealing directly with the country that they know is illegally smuggling, exploiting Congolese minerals, occupying Congolese region that are rich in minerals. So what's the connection between Congo and the cell phones that we have in our pockets, the laptops that we use to write essays or do our work? The so-called green energy transition. We're gonna do that connection on Wednesdays. And on Thursday, we talk about women in the Congolese society. Like, what's the role about women? We often hear about women being raped, but we rarely hear about women's agency to advocate for themselves. And I spent a couple days translating for the organizations really brilliant videos of Maman Eli, a coordinator of a Congolese organization that works in collaboration with Passanja Coalition, how they talk about the work that women are able to be, the work that women are doing in the Congo to empower themselves. Because when you rape, the intent when you want to rape someone, when you want to do that in front of the kids, in front of the family, you want to deprive them from agencies and reduce them to a thing. But in the Congo, with the help of Passanja Coalition Friends of the Congo, we have tried to give back opportunities for those women to empower themselves and to feel themselves lives again. So, what is the role of women in the pursuit of a free Congo in that context? And there are a lot of films that we also propose. And then on Friday, we talk about a free and liberated Congo. What does it really mean to have a free Congo? A liberated Congo? That in the context of occupation, in the context of war, of aggression, in the context of imperialism, what does a liberated Congo look like? What does a free Congo look like? And we finished on Saturday with a big concert, depending on where you are. I think I already know that in Kinshasa there will be a great concert happening. Um, and shout out to the organization Foundation André Blouin Center, the André Blouin Center, that will be hosting a concert to break the silence and offer support, right? And we're calling for your support worldwide to be able to join us in that week long event of celebrating Congo, of denouncing justice. So this is, I'm not sure if I think we lost Brother Claude, or maybe he's not back, but this is for front. This is what we've been doing on the front line in terms of like organizing. And we also want you to be part of that front line, to be at the forefront of our struggle. We want you to be part of uh, uh, the work that we're doing. And you've seen, and we have, I have, and it's always, and he's back, and it's always a pleasure to have a conversation with Claude, Rwandan citizen, discussing about Congo, discussing about Rwanda, because when you are able to understand the things that I'd read to you about this 2001 report, that how neighboring countries are involved, how up, the minerals end up in the US, in France, in Canada, that the oppression that the Congolese and Rwandan people are facing is something so global that we must think outside of the box, that we must be able to also, in our organizing effort, mobilizing effort, to transcend borders. So, Claude, it's been a full 2 hours, more than that, that we discussed. We talked about everything, and
Yeah,
maybe
Tom,
a word to conclude.
I think
Yes,
we need a little extra time.
go
Do
ahead.
you know
So,
why?
what?
I was able to get, remember I made a reference because I always
Mm-hmm.
like to document, but also want the people to hear it directly. Remember I made a reference earlier to my co-authors, Patrick Rugaba
Yes.
and Eric
Mm-hmm.
Ngoga.
Yeah.
I was able to, when you thought you lost me out of the studio, um, see if Eric can actually share very briefly his experience with in the place where he was captured with Dan Manuza. I would love not only for him to share that, but I also want to, more and more Rwandan voices to emerge, and also to start, for the global community to continue, and the Congolese people to continue to connect with the faces of the people who are supporting peace in the Congo. Um, there was a question earlier that was asked by our sister, Miss Kabena.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she asked, why do people do that? Why do they mobilize? And I explained the different parts and different types of people that do. There are also people outside of the country who either have that hateful ethno-fascist ideology, who support Rwanda's invasion of Congo and just see everything as justified because they choose to frame Rwanda's invasion and plundering of the Congo in ethnic terms, and they want to see ethnic supremacy and ethnic domination of the region. There is actually a long standing thing called the Himatusi Empire that was crafted decades ago that is supposed to expand across the region from country to country. There are also other people in outside of Rwanda, and these people outside of Rwanda choose to be silent, even though they live in countries where they have the ability to speak.
Free
They will
speech.
talk about every subject. They will talk about Trump. They will talk about, if they're in Canada, Trudeau or some other, their new,
Prime
the
Minister.
government or whoever, anybody. They'll talk about Kim Jong Un. They'll talk about the Chinese president. They'll talk about, the kings and, queens all over the world, but they won't talk about the crimes that Rwanda is committing. Those are opportunists, and those
Mm.
are, they will denounce a small person. Like if you go and curse somebody out, they'll be mad at you for cursing somebody out, versus being, speaking up about the atrocities that Rwanda's government is committing in the Congo. So those, I call them like intentional, complicit, and accomplices of the crimes in the Congo, even though they would like to have that silence. As there's a saying, a revolutionary saying, that their silence will not save them. So they want that silence to be a shield, and at the same time not be looked at as um, complicit in these atrocities. But when you see what is happening, you see injustice, and you remain silent, you are on the side of injustice. And so there are people who have made that choice, and then there are some of us, like myself and Eric. I hope Eric can join us, um, and maybe share just briefly, who have made the choice to speak truth to power regardless of the dangers. And so I think, those are all the categories. So, Ms. Cabena, I really appreciate the question that you asked, because it opens those opportunities. And I see Eric here. I love seeing Eric on here so he can share. I spoke about him.
Welcome.
I
Thank you.
spoke about him earlier. Um, the the last, there's a question you flashed on, the question about why all these heat for Rwanda, but not when all the mineral wealth is benefiting the US, the EU, the UK, Asia, Israel, everyone but Africans. There are Africans who are benefiting from it. Leaders in Rwanda, the generals in Rwanda, and some of the politicians in Rwanda and Uganda, they have enriched themselves off of the plundering of the Congo. The other thing is, I think the person who left the comment maybe missed a part of the conversation, because this whole conversation has been about the fact that both Paul Kagame and Yoweri Museveni, Paul Kagame of Rwanda and Yoweri Museveni and their militaries, serve as the plantation managers or the mercenaries on the ground in the region for Western interest. And so it looks like it's coming from Karanja Gachucha Keus. Karanja, that's the answer. It's we have the heat for everybody. We started out talking about the Dodd-Frank. We're talking about how the it's not been helpful. There's not been political will, and we talked about who is benefiting from these minerals, but we're not also going to leave out the people who are directly killing and
Doing the
raping and
killing.
plundering,
Exactly.
the
Invading.
people, just because the benefits are going a little bit further away. Now, we still talk about this. One thing I do see you've missed some major benefactors is Canadian companies. Actually, a lot of the plundering of the Congo, if you look at the Toronto stock market, you'll see a lot of mining companies that are part of exploiting the Congo. If you look at Australian companies, there are a bunch of Australian companies. There are Scandinavian countries that benefit from the timber plunder and other things. There's Switzerland, the neutral, which is which basically means,
Glencore.
yeah, Glencore, one of the largest, biggest exploiters of the Congo, led by Israeli billionaire Dan Gertler. When you look at all of this, when you look at all of the players that are in there, they are able to do this because they have access to their local mercenaries and their local plantation managers, who are Paul Kagame and Yoweri Museveni. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to. And let me get out the way. Get time.
Yes. Welcome to Mr. Eric. Thank you for joining us. Claude mentioned you. He mentioned the book that you guys wrote together, but he also mentioned like something very particular that you experienced as one of the genocide survivors. And if you don't mind sharing that experience that you had, I'm not sure if I don't remember if it was him actually being in those camp that was like brainwashing people, or that was him.
No, he was the one captured by. He was in the
Capture. Yes.
RPF with the
Yeah.
RPF
Actually.
during.
Yes. Thanks for
And this
correcting.
is
Yeah.
and this is during the genocide. By the way, like what he's describing is not something that happened before or post genocide, as they like to say. Oh, there was some revenge killings. This is right in the middle of the genocide at 13 years old, and he was in the camp, in the group that had been captured by the RPF. And Eric, I'll let you tell your story.
Yeah, Eric, welcome to Congo Unfiltered. So feel free to speak in an unfiltered manner.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear it
Okay,
perfectly loud
thank
and
you
clear.
very much, Gaetan, for having me. Thank you, Claude, for sharing the link. Actually, I was following your conversation a little bit because we have another conversation which is unfiltered. We are uncensored, and I feel it is connected. We, as a Rwandan, as a survivor, my name is Eric Ngoga, and as Claude mentioned, we co-authored a book, Survivors Uncensored, and the objective is to let the truth out. Because what is going on with the 30 years of genocide, the 30 years of the end of the genocide in Rwanda, and then the starting of the genocide in DRC, is that the truth of the victims, the truth of the survivors is kept silent to give the platform to the RPF and to all those entities that are fighting and are at the mercy of their owners. M23, which is supported by Rwanda, by Kagame, which has many soldiers of Rwandan army in M23. So, as a survivor, I think I had a big opportunity to meet Claude Gatebuke, and then from our journey together, we wrote this book, Survivors Uncensored. And through that journey, that is where Claude got to know my story, because if I did not take the step to go out there and say, hey, I have a different story that I want to share, Claude would never meet me. and I would never meet Claude. So that is my motivation to tell my truth, to let the world know that, okay, there have been a genocide in Rwanda. Tutsi have been killed. Family members from the Tutsi ethnic group, if you want, because the ethnic idea of Rwandan ethnic groups is something that is another topic. But Tutsi people from ethnic group of Tutsi in my family were targeted and were killed. I have so many people in my family who have been killed because they were Tutsis. But myself, I was in Byumba. I was in a different place. I was alone, not with my family. And in Byumba, in April 1994, that city was taken by RPF 2 weeks, 2 weeks after the starting of the war again, the break of the war, because the assassination of the president of Rwanda. Now, as Claude mentioned, we are in the middle of a what can I call it? Actually, it is the war for RPF to seize power in Rwanda, and there is a genocide going on in the places occupied by the army of the ex-military of the government that was in place. So when the RPF took Byumba, where I was, actually it took them 1 week. They did not come and then kill us. They did not kill us the next day. They waited. They surrounded us. They came to see us where we were. At that time, I was in a place of priests, Catholic priests, and there we had so many refugees. People came into that place when the RPF took control of the city. Every day, soldiers would come and visit, go among us. They make us sit down. And then one day, a Sunday, they come, they say, oh, we want to take the young people, young men. So I was the youngest, I was 13, but in my group, I had many other students because I was in a seminary. So I was in the first year of my secondary school, but the group that they took was composed of me, first year, second year, and up to senior 6. I think we had also one student from the university and some other young men that were in that compound where we were. Like, it was not hiding. It was, in Rwandan culture, when there is a problem, people go to gather somewhere. And where did we gather? In a place that we think is going to be safe. That is the priest compound. So they take us to another place. At that place, during the afternoon, they do a screening. I remember my interview was, what is your ethnic group? Why did they do that screening? Because we did not have identity cards. As I was 13 years old, I did not have an identity card. They cannot know, am I a Hutu or a Tutsi?
And that was the RPF doing the screening, right?
Yes, the RPF doing the screening.
And just for clarity for the audience, the RPF is Paul Kagame's party, the Rwandan Patriotic Front, and that's who was, just for clarity, because people might think, it's a different group.
Yeah, it is the same group, FPR, RPF, APR, right? So all of that, those are names of the group which attacked Rwanda in 1990, actually claiming they want to live in peace with Rwandans, but in reality, they wanted to take power, to take control at any cost. And that cost has been the death of thousands, millions of Rwandans. So what I witnessed as a Rwandan, as a young boy at that time, is that those soldiers brought us to that place. They screened us. They put Hutu on one side during the night. Actually, during the afternoon, they just did the screening, and then um, they let us pass the night there. During the night, they come with a list. They call whoever they want to take away. Those people they took away never came back. I never saw them back, and they were killed by the RPF. Now,
Just out of curiosity, if I may interject, were you in that compound by yourself with your family, your mom, like your dad, or were you just
yeah,
by yourself with your
yeah,
family?
I already mentioned it. At that
Yeah.
time, I was separated from my family because of my school. So
Okay.
I am from Kigali.
Mhm.
During the genocide, my mother was in Kigali with my oldest brother. I was in Byumba. That is where this happened. That is where I witnessed that. Also, to mention what happened at my family, in Kigali, my brother was killed by Interahamwe during the genocide. So now, what I witnessed is not that one day, because that one day they killed my colleagues, the other students. But I stayed with those soldiers. They kept me with them. And every day they would come, people. They'll bring people in that compound, the military compound. There are two houses that were owned by the soldiers, and their leader was Dan Munyuza. Dan Munyuza is now an ambassador. He is an ambassador in Egypt of Rwanda. Before that, he was the, how do you call it, Claude? General Commissioner of National Police in Rwanda. So he was the highest ranking in the police in Rwanda, which is like outrageous.
Yeah, that's right.
He's an assassin. He's a killer. There is also a poison with his name on it, Utuzi Twa Munyuza. That is
Yeah.
a person that has a job of killing people, screening people and killing them. So that is why I came out. That is why my journey to tell the truth about what I saw started in 2018, right, Claude? That's the first time that we met.
Yeah.
And from there, we started. I started my journey. Claude started his journey way long time before me, but from there we started to work together about to try to let the world know what really happened in Rwanda. And my objective is not to give what happens in the region, in Rwanda, in the DRC, not to give it to somebody to tell it. The story of the genocide, the story of all the atrocities that we survived, that we witnessed, is within us, and it is our responsibility. It is our right to be the ones to mention it, to talk about it, to be the barrier, the witnesses of that tragedy, not some European experts. Of course, they can do research on it, but I think at the first row of the people who have to talk about this genocide, it is the witnesses, the survivors, and the people who witnessed it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So powerful. I think there is uh episode an episode to be made with
Mhm.
just you, and because I've had the privilege to hear class stories many times, and I think it's very important to highlight. And like you said, there is always power into sharing the truth,
Yeah.
sharing experiences and stories. So
Yeah.
storytelling here, when you sharing your experience, and I think someone even said that it's really crazy how genocide is coordinated and manufactured for years, going by so many different names: RPF, RPA, M23, and even to your story that you just told, and maybe the audience didn't catch it, but your brother was killed by the Interamwe. That's what you said, which is a Hutu paramilitary group, right? That's what they present. and they even said that some of them joined, but your family was victim of it. But you were also victim of Paul Kagame's group, and Paul Kagame is Hutu. So when it comes to killing,
Yeah, it's
and that's
Tutsi.
why
Hokagame is
it's
Tutsi.
the Tutsi. Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. And Paul Kagame is Tutsis. So when it comes to killing, when it comes to committing crimes, really doesn't matter in that case. That's why I always find it fascinating that people are like, oh, don't talk about Paul Kagame. He put the end to genocide. I'm like, that's only maybe a quarter of the story that you heard. There is more to that. There is the fact that people, regardless of the tribe, their ethnicities, were being killed by even people from their own ethnicities, the people of their own tribes. So it's a very interesting story, and I think that there is more work to be done to continue to organize, to continue to talk, to continue to also deconstruct the narrative. Because I was telling off the records on Claude, and he's going to be on the records right now, that it's very strange when you look at spaces that are being done in Rwanda, and I've noticed it, that those spaces tend to be in Kinyarwanda. Like these needs to be, the door needs to be open to more people to come and hear those stories, right? Same thing for Congo. A lot of spaces about the Congo are being done in French, and as good as it's very, there are a larger audience, I would say, in France. But those who write reports, those who make decisions, those who can actually change things, don't only speak French. So it's very important to include other nationalities, other languages into the story that we tell, into the report that we write, into the photos that we share, so that people can actually be able to see, read, watch, and understand our stories so that we can relate and empathize.
Yeah,
And once we can relate and empathize, we can stand in solidarity and take actions.
yeah.
And
Well,
all I can say, and I know you have a lot to say, all I can say is it's thank you for the courage
yeah,
of sharing. I even asked Claude, I asked, bro, like, aren't you like afraid of your people? I was like, oh yeah, I've been, they tried to kill me many times. Because when you decide to engage yourself into denouncing the truth, into telling to the people what happened, because you were a direct witness to a crime, right?
yeah,
But you still take the courage to be like, you know what? I'm still gonna write a book. I'm still gonna share my stories. And I even tell, when I first started with Friends of the Congo, I was like, ever since I joined you guys, I now get weird stuff, and then weird messages, threats. And Brother Morris was like, I will still be cautious, right? Because there is evidence of, and we talked about this in the show, of Paul Kagame is doing that, killing people even in places that was in Rwanda. So I know I spoke a lot, so I'm gonna land my mic there,
Yeah.
and yeah, Claudia.
I do want to just let people know, um, we're not being targeted because we're just speaking the truth. We're targeted because the perpetrators are criminals. So that's
Mm,
important, because some people will say, oh, I'm not going to speak because they'll kill me, right? Or they'll do something, which they do. But then I always, and there are times when, like something will happen and the person will say, somebody will ask me, like, why did they go after that person? Why did they jail that person? Why they torturing that person? Why did they kill that person? And I'm like, listen. We're talking about the RPF. We're talking about Paul Kagame. We're talking about the NRM in Yoweri Museveni. We're talking about people who have a 45-year history of being mass murderers. If you can tell me what the more than 10 million Congolese people actually said, and they've been killed because they said those things, then I will have an answer for you on why they're killing people. So you speak, they'll come after you. If you don't speak, they'll come after you. I mean, you see all these children. I mean, half of the victims, or more than half of the victims, are children who are under the age of 5. These are babies. That's who they mostly. That's who's been mostly affected. Most of the casualties have been children, babies. And what did the babies say? Some of them don't even know how to talk. So I want to make sure that people do understand, like, there's no excuse for silence, especially when you're in a place where you have the ability to speak. You can talk about Trump, you can talk about Obama, you can talk about anybody, but then somehow when it comes to the atrocities that Paul Kagame and Yoweri Museveni are talking about, or do the things that they're doing, you go silent because you're like, oh, I'm scared they'll do something to me. They'll do something to somebody, to people, including you, including me, including others, regardless of whether we speak or don't speak, because we have the evidence. There are more than 10 million victims, most of them being people who can't even talk, babies, and they took them out. So I wanted to just make sure that people don't use, go into silence and use the threat of being harmed, harassed, killed, or whatever as a reason to go silent, because that is not a straight valid reason for silence, because many people were silenced forever, but we will not let that silence actually happen. The people they try to silence, we will be the voice that tells the stories of those who were not, like Eric just told the stories of those people. They thought they took him out forever. Here is Eric. He's talking about those his classmates, those teenagers that they took out. So and I just wanted to make sure that we don't encourage people to be cowards.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
can I add something
yes,
about it?
go ahead,
Yeah,
Eric.
were two things. That's why we wrote the book in two languages, French and English. We are lucky to have people who speak both languages, and then the book Survivors Uncensored, Survivre par la parole. So it is in both languages.
Oh, you speak
French.
French?
Oui, je parle français.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. Then
That
we should have a space in French too. Like,
yeah,
let's
yeah,
do this. Yeah.
yeah. Claude also speaks French,
For
right?
real?
So yeah,
Claude, you never told me
yeah.
you speak French, man.
It's never been necessary.
Alright.
Now it is out, Claude. You're going to be
Yeah.
invited on spaces where we speak French. Of course, we need to bring these discussions in as many
Absolutely.
languages as we can, because this is our responsibility. This is really something we cannot keep quiet. So another thing I want to add, recently Kagame was having this wake-up call about his right to be alive. And one thing that he said, oh, those European, they want us not to talk. The first time you die is the time people tell you not to tell your story. I say, seriously? What? Come on, Kagame. What can you say about that? For 30 years, you have been saying, oh, the genocide has been stopped by me, when he is the first one who started the genocide. And then, we have only the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. If you say something else, you are denying the genocide, or you are negating it, which is not true. The Tutsi in Rwanda were killed, but the Hutus also, the Twas, the foreigners were killed in Rwanda. Now, he's going to export it in Congo. Now he says, oh, first yes, people are being targeted in Congo because of how they look, and all these kind of things. And then we say, Kagame, we saw videos of M23 targeting people, villagers, and say, you are in FDLR. How did they know that someone is in FDLR? They did not catch him with a weapon. They did not catch him with anything that demonstrates
They
that
don't have an ID that says FDLR?
Yeah,
right?
No, but they do that. It is on record. There is a video with this Willie Manzi. This is a spokesman of M23
23.
doing that in a
clown.
stadium, burning their identity cards and saying, you are an FDLR, and what is the next step? They put them on a bus to send them back to Rwanda. Those people Where are they now? We don't know. But what I want to mention is that really our story is ours to tell. And not telling it, it is the first time we start to die silently. And that is what we, Claude and I, and all other survivors and censored, we don't want. We don't want to die many times. Yet they say a coward dies 1,000 times, but a courageous man dies but only once. So that is what we have to try to achieve. Of course, someone can be killed because of this, but then what? As Claude mentioned, you don't talk, you are killed. Better say your story, save some lives, save a nation, save our East African, our Great Lakes region. Because at the end of the day, I believe at one time these people are going to face justice, and the only people who can bring them to justice is the witnesses, the survivors, supported by the governments. But the governments don't have really a need to do that if the survivors don't have those voices from within to who say, this is what happened to us and we deserve justice and we deserve truth to be out. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. We are way past over time, but I'm gonna have the two of you to say something to conclude before we shut down this live that has been exceptional with people commenting on Instagram. I see comments and I try to capture them on YouTube as well. On X, we got some trolls because I have the privilege to host Claude, so he brought his trolls with them, attacking him. His fans, actually, these are your fans, low key, your fans, and trying to attack you. So it's been a really hectic comment sections, and I hope you guys. I wish you guys could see what I see here, but it's very on fire here. So Claude, conversation about today's today's topic, tungsten and truth, how Rwanda's launders Congo's minerals. Um, we talked about Dodd-Frank Act, what that meant, what was the intention, and what it means today. We talked about the mineral deals and how Rwanda today is exporting its minerals to the United States directly, and what that means. So, words, something to close out regarding that topic.
Yeah, and if you can maybe capture all those comments somewhere in the document, that would be great, because we can also use them for another topic of conversation, or other topics of conversation. But before, I guess before I give my concluding remarks, it wouldn't be me if I didn't tell a story, especially a story about trolls. I had a talk at the UN, one of the UN centers years ago. I was talking about how what the mapping report documented was genocide. And I talked about the genocide committed in Congo. And there were people who came, and I already knew, like, I know these trolls. I know them in person, like some of them, not the ones online, but some of them, to the extent that we have exchanged contact information. So sometimes, like, hey, I'm coming to DC. I have an event there. Show up. Sometimes they show up, or they send embassy staff and stuff like that. So some of them, I knew one of the people in the audience. She had, I don't know if it was before or after, but I had seen her speak, and she also at one point had received some award from Rwanda's first lady, Kagame's wife. And so it's three of them. They come in a crew, and the other one eventually at some point became a diplomat. I don't know if she was an ambassador or something I think in Senegal or something. So it was three of them. They show up, and I talk the whole time, and then this lady comes up and she's like, I think what you're saying is wrong. You should not call what happened in the Congo a genocide. So I said, so why do you not think it's a genocide? And she goes, well, I can't call it a genocide because I wasn't there. I said, okay, cool. So do you agree with me that there was a genocide of Jewish people in the 1940s that was committed by Hitler? And she goes, yes. And I asked, were you there? And the audience just busted out in laughter because, you know, she's denying genocide because she did not witness it. Like every genocide that we talk about, that we have actually been there in, you know, and seen that genocide. So it's that, to that extent, that, you know, some of these trolls are just that ridiculous. The So this was in New York. So soon, or years, maybe it was years after that, there was another survivor who was telling her story, and the Rwanda's ambassador to the UN went to her and said, "Oh, now everybody's a survivor, huh?" She said, we have a list of who the survivors are. And those of you who are not on that list of survivors, we are going to systematically destroy you. So, you know, these are all like the behaviors of, you know, not only the trolling behaviors, but the intimidation tactics that they use. You know, she didn't stop telling her story; she still does. But somehow they think it's a badge that the government has to give you, as if, you know, the trauma and the experiences are not enough to know, you know, what you survived. So that's one. But back to the tungsten coming from Rwanda to straight to the US. Rwanda's going to try, as I said before, they will try to claim that this is tungsten from Rwanda and it's not stolen from Congo. And I would tell you, as I said earlier, the RPF and Paul Kagame are so committed to lying, and they are so committed to propaganda and PR that when they laid the very first brick to a processing plant, they would have made it global news that, hey, we've got this tungsten thing going, we're getting started and everything. But now they have to find a cover. They have all this, they occupy the Congo, and now they have to find a cover to launder. It's minerals laundering. They are cleaning and cleansing the crime by basically certifying them in Rwanda. They've been doing this for a long time. It's not a new thing. They've been taking minerals and certifying them in Rwanda as if they came from Rwanda. But then you look, you're like, well, Rwanda's soil doesn't have that. They're like, oh, we have mines. We produce mines. It's like, which ones? It's like, consider it. So why are you exporting coltan and gold? You know, it's like, you know, when you just unpeel like the layers of the onion, you can see the plundering. So tungsten is the latest. They're trying to officialize it. I think eventually, for us, we have the work to expose and show what this crime is, what is actually happening, and who are all complicit, including these companies. This is why the Justice Project is really important, to hold accountable everybody that's involved, and we must see that Justice Project to its end. And so I think it's really important that we continue to center these voices, but also we continue to drive the narrative of what is really happening and who is committing these crimes, who is complicit, who's financing it, and how the world is benefiting from it. I think one of the things we didn't do in this conversation that we should do in the future is connecting the audience to what is happening in the Congo. The fact that we all have these cell phones, the fact that the green revolution that's happening now, or the tech revolution of yesterday, depended on the Congo, I think is important, because most people are unaware that each person around the world, most of the world, carries a piece of the Congo with them. So I thank you for hosting this, Gaetan. Sorry that I asked for the extra time and Eric agreed to jump on, but I also am grateful that Eric was able to join us.
No, thank you. It's always a privilege and honor to speak to you. You're a man full of knowledge and wisdom. Eric, you want to say something to can I conclude this space?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Claude, for inviting me. Actually, Gaetan, I think it's not the first time that we meet in a conversation. First time, I think it was on X. And so I was thrilled to be here today. When Claude proposed, I was like, oh, I'm going because I wanted to be on your show today. actually. So it was a privilege to be able to talk here. And there's something that Claude mentioned about how the government of Rwanda wants the story to be about them. I remember a few months ago when there was this report that came out that says there are Hutu people who were killed because they are ethnic group in Congo, and the ambassador of Rwanda to UN had I don't know how to call it, but he said, "How do you know that they were Hutus?" Is that the problem? The problem is those people died, and the person who gave the testimony is the one who gave the testimony. So the Rwanda narrative, the RPF narrative, the M23 narrative is based on that our story is the right one. Everybody else is making stories. That is why when it comes to what is happening in the DRC, what is happening in Goma, Bukavu, and all the occupied regions right now, for me, is something that I relate to as someone who has been living for until 2016 under the RPF governance, where we say, I have talked about my first experience with the RPF, killing my colleagues. It did not stop. RPF kept killing people, but also cleaning the streets. We don't want clean streets. We want peace. We want people who can live a peaceful life and have a future, not someone who today has a job and then the next day he's killed. Actually, this is something that is common in Rwanda. If you don't agree with RPF in Rwanda, they kill you. But they do it also in DRC, in Eastern Congo. I have one friend of mine, he is very vocal on X, Muheto Muhizi. I don't know if you know this guy. He was in Kinshasa and they came to machete him. But he survived. He's a Congolese Tutsi ethnic group.
Yes,
Yeah,
I've heard about him. Yes.
yeah. So they do that. They actually their solution to everything, it is lie, propaganda, and then assassination. So which is really unsustainable. And so I'm happy to be here today, and I hope next time I will get into the conversation area so that we have a longer conversation. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. This Cedric, I would like to answer you, but we gotta go, Cedric. Like, anyways, well, thank you so much for both of you,
Right.
Eric, Claude.
I
Huh?
think I think I think you should answer that question. How do they still have people if people are being killed every day? I mean,
I'm just gonna shut the folks. This is the people that we are dealing with. Like, it's crazy. Why do we still have people
right.
like?
But
Anyways, I'm not sure
Well,
where he's trying to go
you
with this
can try to
conversation.
answer with the terms that we found in Kanombe. But still, Rwanda has soldiers in Congo, but many of them are being killed actually. And
Oh yeah.
when the Human Rights Watch mentioned it, do you know what the spokesperson of the ministries, the government of Rwanda said? They said the Human Rights Watch is stalking us. While the Human Rights Watch is using satellite images, public available images, to say, hey, this shows that there are people who are dying in Congo. There are soldiers, Rwandan soldiers, that are being killed and then come to bury them silently. And then, oh, they are stalking us. Why are you bringing your nose in our business? They're not our business. They're just satellite images. Thank you.
yeah, the last thing I would say just to this comment is like I don't think anybody has ever claimed that that the number of people who are being killed in Rwanda exceeds the number of people who are being born. So
No one
this
has said
person,
that.
the argument here is like, if people are being killed every day, they will be finished. That's never happened. Like nobody has ever been able to completely and totally exterminate a whole population. And so, this is like shows again, this is why it's important for the audience to see these bots are coached. And when it comes to like having even some amount of logic, if you are programmed, you're brainwashed, or you're a bot, you're just gonna repeat. It's like rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, and hope that the argument makes sense.
Yeah, this doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah.
But I want to address his point though about the economy of Rwanda, because it's important for me to do that, because when I posted early this week a tweet um, regarding the economy, the extreme poverty according to uh, a visual capitalist, and he shows DRC at 85.3%, and Rwanda wasn't on the list. And Wanda was on the list, and people like Cedric and many other folks pro Kagame's accounts. I think it's perhaps interesting for me, or important for me to show the correct image, this one. And when people saw that, they were like, "Oh my God, Rwanda is not on the list. Paul Kagame is doing a great job." I'm not sure if folks can see. I'm trying to zoom in. uh oh my God, Kagame is doing a really great job, but look at DRC at the top. And people miss to understand that these are datas that are collected, which means that if there is no data to collect, they won't be able to establish an accurate ranking. So the World Bank doesn't have accurate data regarding Rwanda. And to even be more precise, according to the World Bank's poverty and inequality platform, Rwanda hasn't published verified poverty data in years. They have not. In 2019, actually, the Financial Times, and I think I showed this before, the Financial Times revealed that Rwanda's government quietly changed its poverty line definition, which was drastically lowering the official poverty rate. So when you have a government that is intentionally manipulating data, that government becomes unreliable in terms of sources, right? So yes, the Rwandan government, or Rwanda as a country, is not on this list simply because there was not enough data to be able to accurately tell people the extreme poverty level, like the extreme poverty, which is defined as those living under $3 per day, accounting for each country's living cost. And that's very important. And it says right there, the source was the World Bank and our world in data. But the same, the same, um, I would say, entity or institution, Visual Capitalist, published this in 2025. It was early this year that they published this. And you can see that the world's poorest countries by GDP per capita in 2025, obviously, the vast majority of those countries are in sub-Saharan Africa. I think that's something very important to mention. And you see DRC, we are right there. And then you will see Rwanda. Where is Rwanda? I'm losing Rwanda
Scroll back up.
somewhere.
Scroll back up. It's right close to Congo, actually. There it
Right
is.
here. There you go.
Yeah.
Rwanda is right there. So
Yeah.
Rwanda is among, like Professor Philippe was saying last weekend, that Rwanda is among the top 20. I think it's position 19 right now, 18th, among the poorest countries in the world. But people took this image out of context without really being smart and trying to realize, what are we even looking at? Like, what is extreme poverty? What is the country's living cost? They don't even know. This Cedric, I guarantee you, doesn't even know the country's living cost. Like, he doesn't know anything. But I, I think these are the type of lies that we must deconstruct every single time. And sometimes they're gonna use a story that we're telling, and they take that out of context. And that's exactly the type of lies that has allowed Paul Kagame to appear as the perfect president that Rwanda needs, because he has ended or single-handedly handed genocide. Without by telling that part of the story, they are
Yeah.
erasing everything else. They're erasing
Yeah.
that he was also killing Rwandan, that he was also killing Tutsis, that he was also killing Hutus, until today, jailing people. And if that wasn't enough, crossing the borders, killing Congolese because he's aiming, or he wants the minerals to be able to be that person that the West can count on. These are the story, unfortunately, we need to continuously tell or retell the stories that we have to continuously, that we have the narratives that we have to deconstruct, to debunk, because it is within those lies that sometimes hide our own humanity as people. Because when they tell that one group of people are evil, it's because they don't want you to hear the crimes that they committed to those people. When they're trying to emphasize who is Claude's father, they're trying to derail you from the reality of what they're doing. What they're trying to say that, oh, I think I saw a comment here that Mr. Eric was the only survivor, or the only witness in that area. I literally just showed the Spanish indictment that was telling similar stories. So they're gonna go
Yeah.
and trying to tweak things because they do not want you to speak about the facts. Yeah, Claude.
Yeah, Geta, I think to the point you just made, it's important too for people to understand. These, like I said, the bots, these robots, when they make comments like that. Was he the sole survivor? You can already tell this is somebody who doesn't read. They're like the book In Praise of Blood. The witness to what Eric is describing is an RPF soldier. There are like other people who have actually spoken about these things, who have written about it, who have made it public. But hey, somebody who is in the matrix, that's been went to those brainwashing camps, they just know what they know, what they've been brainwashed to. Speaking to the numbers that you were showing, I always say that Rwanda and Uganda are two of the poorest countries in the world that are waging one of the most expensive wars and
Mm.
genocide in modern history over the last century and this century, the last millennium, at the end of the last millennium and the beginning of this millennium to this day. And they only are able to do it because they have the European Union as a partner, the US, the UK, and others who supply them with weapons, training, and all of that. And the other thing is, Rwanda opts out of a lot of international agreements, which is why sometimes they're missed on reports like this. The one example I would like to give is the ICC and the ICJ, International Criminal Justice. Rwanda is not signatory to the Rome Statute, so they are not subject, they're not in the jurisdiction of the ICC, except if the ICC prosecutor or the government of Congo was to bring about a case, or the Security Council, they could still go after them, because I believe there's been a few other countries where they're not signatory and they've gone after the leaders. I'm not sure if Sudan was signatory to it when they indicted al-Bashir, the other genocide perpetrator who is now in jail in Sudan. But the other thing is, when the ICJ found Uganda guilty of the crimes committed in the Congo and ordered them to pay reparations, Rwanda was not tried because Rwanda is not signatory to that court. So somebody could come up with an argument and say, oh, Rwanda didn't commit those crimes because the ICJ never went after them. That's the type of argument you're going to hear from the bots. They will disregard the fact that, oh, yeah, it's not signatory, so they never actually went after them. But they won. Their partner in crime, their godfather in crime, was actually found guilty in order to pay reparations. So I wanted to give that context also, that there are a lot of things that Rwanda opts out of, international agreements and treaties and things like that, so that they can continue to cover up and just push the propaganda that they want and get away with the crimes that they commit.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we reach, I think it's a record today, 900 live folks are watching this right now. So thank you again, everyone, for watching it, for tuning to Friends of the Congo page, social media, and watching this. Continue to be involved. Continue to sign up for Congo Week, where we are going to spend the whole week from the 19th to the 25th, speak about Congo, about justice. There is a barcode top left. Scan this, and you'll be able to access the Congo Week. To my guests, to you, Claude, to you, Eric, thank you so much again for spending 3 hours with me. Claude, particularly, Eric, for joining us. So we're gonna be back. I hope to have you back, Eric, particularly Claude. You know, you're always welcome to discuss more about the Congo, to discuss more about Rwanda, to discuss more about other powers at play, about the U.S., about France, about the U.K., about Belgium, about all the forces that are making today Congo to be what it is today. Talk about the Congo's leadership, talk about the DRC, talk about President Tshisekedi, talk about Paul Kagame, and also, because we tend to forget, talk about President Museveni, still in search of getting knowledge about the ADF. Once I'm armed or equipped to speak about the famous ADF, who are they and what they're really doing, I'm telling you that we're gonna bring it on this show and we're gonna have a conversation about the ADF and who they are. So until then, I wish y'all a happy Saturday. Spend a really great time with families, with friends, wherever you want, but enjoy your weekends. And I say, see you next Saturday. Ciao.
Peace.